Greetings.
Hello.
Greet.
My greeting.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler. Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello and welcome to episode 199 of Concede. 199? That's insane. A Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. From Gadgets in New York, it's me, Ridiculous Hat. From Karazhan, California, we have Bodikus.
Hello.
From the Maelstrom, Louisiana, it's Appa.
Hola.
And making a pit stop on the way to Uldum with us is you, listener. We're supported in large part by you. If you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/CoinConcede. And we'd like to give a huge thanks to Momo's Dad and Swarm Tides for being our newest patrons. They are wonderful. You are wonderful for listening. And if you want to make us feel wonderful, well, you already do that. But if you'd like to document it, then you can leave an iTunes review, and it helps other people find the show. And, so how's life and ladder not being able to play with the new cards? Appa?
Worse than if we could play with the new cards.
Yes, that's true. So, Bodikus, tell us more about that.
So I said this on the bonus episode, but you will not have heard that yet. So I'm playing a lot of Pogo Rogue because it beats Warrior, and all I really care about right now is making sure that I beat them. And so far, I've been very successful, as well as beating other people. I've actually been playing at my computer now, which is not something I've been doing a lot lately. I almost always play on my phone, and all my recorded matches on my computer, I have a 66% win percentage. So pretty well. I like it. I like the deck a lot. It's very complex having a bunch of like DS wins. So I don't know. I've enjoyed it.
I played a bit of Pogo Rogue when, like, a few weeks ago before I started playing Test Rogue, honestly, because my meme potential has just skyrocketed. And I found it to be pretty decent. If you build
It's good. It
yeah,
feels good.
it's a good
Which
deck.
version have you been playing? So I picked the version that had the highest win percentage and didn't really look at the list and just started playing it with it. And basically it just plays every single one of the cycle cards you can possibly play, and then it does not play Spirit of the Shark, which surprised me, but I have not missed.
Yeah, Spirit isn't good in that
And
deck.
yeah, and it just plays cards to get your pogos and lackey cards.
Yeah. Do you play Myras, and do you play Heist Baron?
No Myra's, yes, High Baron.
Okay.
Myra's is interesting. I don't know that I ever, because I never have gone for infinite pogos. I've never felt like I needed to. So, like, I don't really know what the Myra's is doing. It always feels like, I don't know. It feels like as long as you draw one of your payoff cards in Barista Lynchen, which has been a complete all-star, and always the card that I'm looking to Shadow Step if I have the option. But you either draw Barista or Togwaggle, or I keep forgetting the name of it. Joy Buzz. Yeah. If you draw, as long as you draw one of the three of those and you don't die in the early game, it really feels like the deck kind of turns through itself really well, and you can start getting some big pogos in play.
Yeah, the best list I tried was very similar to that. I tried a list with Myras, and it was not it seems like getting pogos quickly is the way to do it, but you're just a value deck that happens to play pogo and not a pogo deck. And I've really enjoyed that about it. The best list I found, I didn't try one with Heist Baron, but I did play Barista Lynchen, and that card is the best card in the deck. I did play Geppetto Joy
Oh yeah,
Buzz, and
it's
yeah,
not particularly close.
the
It's
list
so good.
the list I was trying had two shivs in it, and I kind of forgotten that card existed, but like it's pretty decent.
Yeah, especially because you want to play Thalnos anyway because it gives you card draw, and I can't tell you how much better it is having two Fan of Knives alongside of Thalnos against a lot of the matchups you need it in. because in the early game, Fan has just been a huge blowout against basically every deck I've played against, because they never expect you to have Fan when you're playing Rogue. Because your early game, they never find out that you're playing Pogos, because there's so many different Rogue decks. You just play out like a Lackey deck, and then eventually you go Pogo, Lab Recruiter, and then they realize the game is going a completely different direction than what they had initially thought potentially.
Man, Thalnos Fan, we got some hot tech from 2015 in here. That's some good 2015 technology.
Yeah, it's been for me. I got up to rank 3 from the bottom of 5, so like I didn't play infinite games, but it was good enough to get me up there.
Yeah. What about you, Appa? What are you doing?
Yeah, I also talked about laddering on the bonus episode, but y'all won't hear that for a little bit. I hit Legend on Americas. I got up to rank 4 in Asia and stopped there. I was going to go to rank 5 on EU, but then I didn't. So I got up to rank 12 from there. And in my chest after the reset, I got a gold man. I forget which other server it was. It was either EU or Asia. So that was kind of sweet open. Everything else was just a pile of dust. And then after the reset, I've been playing some Shark Rogue for the most part, because it feels like it's got a lot of different stuff going on, and kind of bored of Cyclone Mage, so kind of doing the sort of like end of the format tour of all the popular decks, and on Shark Rogue right now. And then I had a Warrior quest, and I just decided to play a game of Control Warrior, and it was not super fun for me or my opponent, because I had a 7 and had to play Hearthstone after that. So won that one, got the quest, and then I prepped some decks for the listeners top 8, which is Conquest, and I came to the lineup of Holy Wrath Paladin, Tempo Rogue, like the Shark Rogue, but with 2 saps in it, because decks that aren't playing sap are insane, and then Aggro Shaman and Control Warrior. So yes, it seems like a fun lineup to play, and I'm excited for the top 8 match or matches, depending on how it goes.
So Golden Manatide Totem, that's pretty nice. Unfortunately, it's no Golden Muckmorpher.
Did you open one?
Did you have to do that? You have to dagger him like that?
I don't know. I was too busy today to open my chest. I haven't been able to open it yet.
Oh, so you're just salting the wounds for no reason.
I'm just I'm just totally daggering you because I saw an opportunity. I'm
just
sorry.
like a true road main.
Yeah.
Fair.
Stabbing
Just
me in the back out of nowhere.
For not really any reason, just because they can. Yeah. Well, hey, that's not a priest thing to do. So, anyways, so I've played a little bit. Now I'm hoping to get the bonus episode and the regular episode out this weekend, because I'm not going to have time after this week to do it, so I need to do it soon. But we'll see what happens. Not committing, but I'm saying it out loud so that there's some sort of force in the universe saying you should really get both done this weekend. We'll see. And then I've been playing more Wild than Standard still. I played a few games of Cyclone Mage because I wanted to make sure I wasn't rusty with it, and I played multiple mirror matches, and it's stupid. I think mirror matches are real dumb, because there are a bunch of cards that seem like they matter, and then there's Mountain Giant, which actually matters, and just the first person to play a Mountain Giant wins the game, because you don't actually play removal. You play freeze effects, but I had one game where my opponent got the first Mountain Giant. I'm like, I'm way ahead. I have double Frost Nova, and then they also had double Frost Nova, and they got Giant first, and they got to Nova second, which is, I cannot ever beat that. So I don't care for that mirror match.
Yeah, the mirror match there. It's just
kinda-
It's so
it's awful
silly.
to play.
Especially if you get to the giant off and one of you gets the Twisted Abomination or whatever it is first, and then they just value trade their 8/8 and then calling it, and you're just infinitely
Grave
behind.
Horror, yeah.
Yeah, Grave
It
Horror.
feels like the Cube Warlock mirror is taken to like the extreme, because you have freezes too, just to like make it even worse for the person who's behind. But yeah, it's something.
It's like, remember how Old Hunter, like back in the day, it's when you were playing the whoever got to play the high main first probably won, and whoever went first probably won because it was all about initiative. It's like that, but then whichever deck plays the first Mountain Giant, it's like Rafam gets played, and now your deck turns into Q-Block. Like whoever plays the first
Yeah.
Mountain Giant, your deck transforms into something else entirely. It's
Yeah,
and
pretty
I don't
much.
even think Cyclone Mage is broken because I played a bunch against decks that were a little bit more aggressive, and it's hard to win. It like Cyclone Mage can very easily be countered, but you can't counter the mirror match because it's just kind of dumb. It's just kind of
I'm fully convinced that if Warrior was touched or dropped off in popularity, Cyclone Mage would also drop off.
yes.
'Cause I feel like that's just the big 1-2 in the format. Is like, it's the big question: is like, are you on Cyclone Mage or are you on Warrior? If not, why aren't you on one of those two decks? Like if you're trying to win
But
as much as
like
possible.
there are plenty of decks that beat both, and Ladder
Yeah.
has a lot of options, and we'll get to tournaments later. There were I think 8 different archetypes that won this week in one specialist qualifiers, which is kind of unusual. There's diversity out there, but those concepts aren't being publicly iterated because specialist means people just work on 3 decks. So I think there's a lot out there that the format is way more diverse, but Cyclone Mage feels the dumbest, and Doctor Boom is the dumbest. That's
Well, hopefully they
where
do something about specialist in the future.
he said,
Oh
alluding
man.
to the future. But before we get there, there's a different format I've been playing. It's called Wild, and I'm still enjoying it. And I switched over to a different deck. It is Mind Blast Extra Arms Dragon Priest. And
You have my attention.
okay, so what I want you to envision, Bodicus, what I want you to envision is that it's 4, and you have a single minion in play, and you go Radiant Elemental, Coin, Shadow Visions, Extra Arms, More Arms. And then you attack for 6. He doesn't have my attention. I'm going to repeat that in a second. Hi, Kim.
Sorry, wife just got home.
Tell her I said what's up.
But yes, I heard that, and that sounds nice.
Yeah,
That
so it's a
sounds
list by
very
Corbett,
nice.
and it's just an aggro deck, but Extra Arms Radiant Elemental, I'm really glad that those cards didn't exist together in their current form in the format, because that's 2 mana Blessing of Kings that you can split in half, and it's really, 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 really good, and I've killed a bunch of people on turn 6. So,
All
kill-
right, this
it's
sounds cool.
it's faster than the Rogue deck I was playing, and that means quite a bit. So, I've enjoyed that tremendously.
The rogue deck you were playing also had the stupid 4-mana weapon in it. That was your Kingsbane,
Okay.
right?
But then you play Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, and it's not stupid anymore now, is it?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, you start getting online on turn 4, they're just on the board running with extra arms and stuff on too.
Yeah.
So
Aggro Priest
Yeah,
and
you're-
Control Rogue as nature intended.
Oh man.
Yeah.
What universe do we live in?
We live in one where Uldum is almost here, and Bodicus actually has some information about that. So why don't we bop our heads for a little bit and then talk about that?
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
Right, so unfortunately, we have to talk about some news sites because there's a ton of them before we get to what everybody wants to hear, which is our hot takes on cards. And boy, let me tell you, I have a preview of the cards we're going to talk about, and we have some hot takes coming up later for you in the show. But for now, we're about patch 15.0. So there's going to be guaranteed to anyone who logs in during the first 90 days of Uldum. Onward to Uldum, which is the new is going to be are going to be coming up that'll have special rewards for us. The Tombs of Terror is a new solo content that we're going to have in September, so very similar to we're going to get the new set, we're going to have it for a while, and then once things probably end up cooling down a little bit, we're going to get solo content, so hopefully it can was awesome. They nerfed Quest Rogue again. It's not a
Like-
huge nerf to it.
But it kind of is.
I mean, yes, it is. I don't know anybody who was playing Crystal Core in Wild, but if you ever did, then it's worse now. So I don't know. This is specifically a change to Crystal Core, but it feels like to me. Do you guys think that this is just a change in mechanics for a potential mechanic that's coming out with Saviors or in the future, like to the way something worse, or are they literally just making Crystal Core worse? Because basically, what's happening is now when you get cards that it sets the power and toughness to a specific amount. So a card like Barnes or like Sonya's Shadow Dancer, when it gets played again, it's going, or when it comes into play, it's going to be a 1/1. Crystal Core will not set it to a 4/4. I'm interested. Do you guys think that this is a preview for a reason, like a game rules type of change, or is this just nerfing Quest Rogue again?
They said this was
Pat, what do you think?
for the Warlock Legendary Dark Pharaoh Tekahn, the one that makes your lackeys 4/4s. They said that this was developed for that as well. So I think it's functionally meant for that card and just happens to hit the Crystal Core. They said to address inconsistencies. And Crystal Core was weird anyways. They could have left it the way they did. Because, again, it's relatively low impact, but they designed all this new tech that's going to work with this new Warlock Legendary. But this is, like, substantial. This is, like, a kind of a big deal because the way it used to work...
It would have been a big deal if Crystal Core was still legal.
Right.
It would have been a way
bigger deal. So the way that it used to work was Crystal Core was an aura that just was constantly in play and just like Dr. Boom with Rush, and just constantly said to every minion, "You're a 4/4," and just constantly said that anytime you did anything to a minion, it's like, "Nope, you're a 4/4." And if your minion got stolen, it became a 1/1, became whatever size it was supposed to be. But now it's like spray paint that every minion it walks through the door, and Quest Rogue walks up, and Crystal Core is like, "Hi, you're a 4/4 now," and then leaves. And then if something else comes up after and says, "No, you're actually a 1/1," it's like, "Okay, I'm a 1/1." It's like any other layered effect. Like if you Aldor Peacekeeper something and then Keeper of Uldum on it, it becomes a 3/3. It doesn't stay at 4/4. So it's now become like a layered effect, like every other layered effect, which is probably how it should have worked from the beginning. But it's not how it works from the beginning. It's a dramatic, enormous, crazy change because, in particular, Sonya's Shadow Dancer, you may recall, was good in Quest Rogue, and still probably is. And now is way worse because your Stone Tusk Spores that you trade in and then play a bunch of, they're not 4/4s every time. After the first one, it's a 1/1. It's a huge deal.
But when you shadow step it again, it's back to, because nothing's setting its
should be
power
back
and
to a
toughness,
4/4 when
so-
you shadow step it. Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting, kind of a interesting change to have happened at this time. But I think overall it's a good thing because it's going to make the engine be smarter.
But why aren't they refunding for this? Why is this not a refund?
That's a good question.
I mean, I know the answer, but I don't like the answer.
Is the answer because it's in Wild now?
Yes, that is the answer.
It's in Wild.
That's their dumping ground for their mistakes.
I think it's in Wild and it's a legendary. I'm be willing to bet if it was a rare or a common, they would know that they're going to get comments about it and would just refund it. But the fact that it's that much dust, like it's a significant amount more dust.
But that means they're going to get more comments. There are already 3 threads on Reddit about it, and I'm not going to say that response is necessarily deserved in that volume, but this is a major functional change to a core part of the deck. Why is it not a refund? And if the only reason that it's not a refund is because it's not in Standard, that's kind of not super nice to Wild players.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not a...
I was hoping one of you had an answer.
What?
I was hoping it was wrong.
I mean, I just had a snide remark that I kept to myself.
I appreciate your restraint, Appa. I appreciate that. But, like, you hit the nail on the head. I think the reason they didn't do a refund is because it's in Wild. But what standard is... What example is that setting?
Well, have they ever nerfed a card that was in Wild already? And... Well, also, this is weird because it's technically it's a nerf to Crystal Core, but it's a change in the way something works, right? So it's almost like when they nerfed Leper Gnome and people were talking about Mechaneer Thermoplug getting dust. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of similar to that in that they didn't change the card, they changed the way the card works, right? So all of the nerfs that we've gotten refunds are they've specifically changed wording on the card. They've changed a number, they've changed a word, they changed something on the card that changes the that nerfs it. Whereas this, they're not actually changing the card, they're just changing the way that this mechanic works, right?
Well, they didn't change the text on Yogg, but when he died, he stopped casting, and they gave us refunds. And they did nerf a wild-only card once with Aviana. They gave us dust back for Aviana.
And they gave us dust.
Yeah.
So I think that's got to be it, because it's obviously not, because I mean maybe it is because it's wild and that's the way it looks, but I feel like it's because it's changing the mechanic specifically.
Yeah, I
of
could see
how-
because they didn't
But-
like actually physically change something.
In the patch notes, card changes is the heading of the section in Blizzard's patch notes. It's they're calling it a card change.
I'm just trying to give you an
No,
answer,
I
man. You keep
understand.
poking holes in my answer. I don't know what you want
Like,
from me.
I see what. Well, we need to have perspective here, but it's. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm saying Blizzard is calling this a card change. It's in the section of the patch note that says card changes. So even if that's the logic they're taking,
it's like Hat asked Botticus to build a boat, and Botticus built a boat and started rowing on over to him, and Hat just started shooting holes in the bottom of the boat and was like, "Why won't your boat float?" Big
it's
Should have built a better boat, man.
no. You should have paid me to be on the boat. You should have given me my dust back so I can buy a ticket to your boat. This analogy doesn't make a ton of sense, but there's not really a real reason to not give dust here, except they don't want to. and
Sorry,
they
we
feel like they
can't
don't
all
have to.
give hat analogies over here. We don't just have these made up analogies that work out perfectly.
Look, the analogy is you asked for an answer, Botticus gave you one, and then you started shooting holes in the bottom of the boat / answer. All right,
It's all right. All right.
that's the connection.
I'm looking forward to Blizzard's response here because I'm very curious as to the reasoning behind a card change listed under the section card changes on their patch notes with major functionality adjustments did not get the same treatment as other times historically like Yogg Saron when this has also happened. And maybe the logic that I would use if I were using logic here, which I guess I will, is that it's not a change for balance reasons. They're not changing this because of balance, they're changing this because of functionality. And the logic we've seen so far is that unless it is meant specifically to alter gameplay for the sake of meta balance, they don't believe in offering a dust refund, even though what the player base actually cares about is the playability and not the balance. And this is a major change to the playability of the card.
Also, I want to note that Wash in the Wind said Naga Sea, which was also changed, which was a wild only card, because
Oh, yeah.
because
think it's so
people
funny.
should know that at least somebody brought it up that Aviana was not the only card.
It's true.
I think it's so funny that Ungora's been rotated for like months. Whenever Rogue was like in its second and third life, like third iterations, everyone was like, "So busted, can we fix this?" And it rotates out for months, and they're like, "Oh, we got the Sonya fix for you
Like,
just in time."
well, I wonder if this was meant to be the Dr. Boom nerf, but they just accidentally nerfed Crystal Core instead out of force of habit. Like, they're just like, we meant to hit Boom, but we just hit the Rogue quest again.
Just give it the fourth time.
Just like, weren't we
man.
supposed to take off that rush part? Oh, man.
Oh man, we forgot to take Quest Rogue off the dartboard of cards that that we throw at to see which gets nerfed. Man, I guess we could take it off now.
Or it's like when someone wins an office raffle and this was the write-in scribbled hastily in the back of a bar napkin. They're like, who did this? Jerry, was this you? Jerry, did you write in for this?
It was Gary. Gary is our savior.
Gary would never
is
do
the
this.
one.
Gary wouldn't do this.
Gary wouldn't do this to Quest Rogue.
No, Gary
You
wouldn't
don't
do this to us.
Oh man.
Gary's a good boy. Keep going, Botticus.
All right.
yes.
Well, so the last part of these patch notes is that a new arena season is coming, and by coming I mean it's here. Because we're basically with every new set they rotate the sets that are going to be used for. So the new sets that will be used are basic and classic, saviors, Rustcon's, kobolds and catacombs, and LOE. Of course, since we don't actually have saviors cards yet, saviors is not in arena, but all of the other sets are. So you have a couple days to play arena without saviors, but all of these other sets, which is probably pretty interesting. But also, the new lackey is live on servers, so you now have a 1-mana lackey that gives another minion plus O plus 2 and taunt.
We should probably be clear about this. This is not intended. They did not intend to turn arena on without the set that the new arena format's built on. And they didn't intend for the Discover pool to still be the same as the old arena season. This is we kind of have it's not what it's supposed to be. It was supposed to stay the same.
Oh wait, so that's weird. So it's new card sets, old Discover mechanics.
And also it's the new arena format except Uldum's not out yet, so there's no Uldum cards.
All right, that's a little weird,
It's
but
a
that
bug.
is what it is.
It's a bug.
It's
not
live,
supposed to happen.
so-
But yes, it is live. And the new lackey is live. So, and
Yeah.
also, Gorilla Bot is bugged right now. It will always discover a mech even if you have an empty board. So go nuts and draft your Gorilla Bots.
That card's
Does-
pretty good.
Yeah?
Does that count for wild too?
If you want to try Gorilla Bot out in Wild Appa, you are welcome to give that a shot.
Hey, there was a. Oh wait, no, that was a Tavern Brawl deck. I was I was like, oh, Gorilla Bot saw play. Oh, that was that Tavern Brawl where you had to pick
Well, it's not
4
played like
cards
the
and they
week it
banned
was
one.
released because like Mech Warper mech decks existed, so you just like tossed it in there and it was fine. But those decks were bad, so Gorilla Bot was always pretty bad. Anyways, I played earlier because I was playing Shark Rogue and I was playing against aggro, and I'm like, I guess I should just play this Miscreant. What would the best lackey be for me right now? And then Titanic lackey showed up, and I was like, 1/6 taunt for 4. That's cool. just taunt on demand for your lackey. Really nice.
Yeah,
So-
people were saying that lackey was like worse than the other ones. I don't think so.
I think
like
I think it's
solid
probably
middle
like-
at least.
So this would for sure take over the deal 2 damage spell,
Well,
and then
+1 so in rush is pretty.
I would take this over Evolved Lackey every time. Or at least, like, not
Well, yeah,
every
that's-
time, but a lot of
that's-
times.
That's almost always the worst one. And then second worst might be the make a 2 which is in certain decks is the best one. it's kind of weird. It's
make a 2
I mean,
drop
all the
is-
lackeys are
yeah.
good. What we've learned, all lackeys are good, and I think this one is also still good. I think it's solid middle of
I mean,
of the lackeys.
the
Definitely not the best one, but still good.
The 2 best ones are the ones that don't care about the board, and all the other ones care about the board and are way more fair, but dealing 2 damage and discovering a spell, they don't care about the board, so they are clearly better.
Anyway, so patch is live. Make sure you get ready for the new set. It's coming soon, just a couple days away. And speaking of the new set coming, we had a bunch of streams happening today. And there will be a few more tomorrow. There are some streamers to be able to go to Blizzard headquarters, or I don't know if it was headquarters. They got to go to Blizzard and play with all of the new cards. And so there was a bunch of streams going on. You had Allie and Purple, Vigil, Dexter, Slissa, and Regis Kilbin were all playing today, and as well as a bunch of the more popular Hearthstone streamers got access to a server where they can play with the new cards as well, which will be tomorrow, and probably will happen by the time you've heard this if you're listening to the podcast version of this. But if you're live here right now, make sure you check out some of these streams. I got to catch a good bit of Purple's stream. He was messing around with Either of you guys get a chance to check out any of these streams, or you busy all day? Had like you got to see a little bit.
Yeah.
Who'd you get to catch?
I watched a bunch of people, and the first wave of from home streamers is live. It included Language Hacker, Bloody Face, Papa Jason was one of them. Pear was one of them. There were Dog was
Dog's
one of them.
playing right
He
now.
had so many viewers. Obviously, Kibler. There were a lot of people that were trying a lot of things, and the format looks super fun, and people are trying weird things. I saw a surprising number of paladins, and they had quest icons over their head, and I mean, it is day 0, so I guess that makes sense. I don't think that'll last too much longer. But also, I saw Dexter was playing Singleton Holy Wrath Paladin, and he got tank up on 2. And when I tuned in, he was on 24 health and 31 armor. And it seemed good. And there were also...
Really? Did it?
Yeah. But I was clicking
you
around...
sure?
Yes, I am sure. Yes, I am.
Unless he was playing against Warrior.
He was.
I don't think Warrior cares.
He was doing fine. It was tank up was good for Holy Wrath Paladin. We can just move on from that point. But basically, I was just clicking around looking for people playing Priest because I wanted to see as much Quest Priest gameplay as possible. I am that is 100% the deck I'm playing on day 1, and all these people with the Divine Spirit in your deck, take it out of your deck. Just play 1 or 2 topsy-turvies, and then just use your hero power, and you will win because you get a Blessing of Kings every turn. Like, you don't need to do more than that. You just give a minion +3/+3 permanently every single turn, and eventually your opponent's going to die. That's enough. You don't have to do more than that. And it looked pretty sweet in action, and like I saw, I think it was Pear cast Divine Hymn on Injured Blade Master and herself, and that was 10. Just like 10. The quest is 15. Just heals for 10 on 2 things. It was. I enjoyed
9, right?
It's 6 and
You
4.
only heal 4
and 6.
Well,
Divine Hymn.
don't you only get? Oh, Divine Hymn's only 5 though.
Divine Hymn 6.
Right?
Divine Hymn heals
Yeah,
6.
it is
Divine Hymn
6?
heals 6.
It's 2 mana heal
Okay,
6.
you're right. I'm wrong.
I see this. This is a ploy to get people to not think he knows what the card does.
No, this is
He's
Bodicus
playing the
versus
long
Math
game.
again, and somehow Math is 2-0. Somehow Math is undefeated.
Math is usually correct.
It's-
That's my favorite.
It is typically accurate. Oh man. So I also watched I watched a bunch of people that were playing Burgle Rogue and a bunch of people trying Mage. Kibler was playing Quest Warlock, which looked way better than I expected to. Except for when he cast Rafam with the quests and life tapped into a 0-mana Duskfallen Aviana and did not play it and would rather burn a card. Because Duskfallen Aviana is such a terrible card that even when it is free, it is bad. Even at 0 mana, you wouldn't play that card. Because he had it at 0 mana and he had 10 cards in hand. It was the 10th card. And he said, I would rather burn a card than ever play this.
I think every single time I've ever ended up with that on the board, never put it in any of my decks, but from like an evolve or something happening on the board, like random generation, I think I have always lost the next turn.
Yeah.
Because they just get such a just gross mana advantage.
Yeah, because
I
you give your
definitely-
opponent 10 mana.
I definitely haven't always lost next turn, but I almost have always lost when that has been, unless I've just been able to evolve it again right away. Yeah, that card's something bad. So yeah, out because it's really cool seeing all the new cards get played, and I can't wait to play my own versions of the decks because. But either way, so something I alluded to earlier is that there are going to be massive changes to Grandmasters. The list is no more. Oh, I was hoping you were going to give us the sound bite. Yeah. Yay.
Wait a minute, hold on.
That
hold
one,
on.
that one's for me.
I've got a better one. Hold on. Where is this? You may continue.
Okay, so I'm pretty stoked about this. I mean, so I don't think Specialist was the worst format. I think it was okay, but I don't know that it was necessarily accomplishing the goals they wanted, and it was largely unpopular. Maybe that would have changed if they had stuck with it a little longer, but also it might not have gotten better, and that would have been worse. So it's getting a form quest called, I guess we're calling it Shielded Conquest, where basically it plays out exactly like Conquest, except to start you get to shield one of your decks, and that deck cannot get banned. So before the banning phase, you just say, "This is a deck that I'm going to be able to play in this lineup. You cannot ban." And then you continue as Conquest, except it's 4 decks, but a best of 3. So what do we think about this format, knowing almost nothing about it, and hat is pointing to Appa. What do we think, Appa?
I don't know. It looks like I've never played this before. It's significantly different from Conquest, and I think it'll probably lead to bringing riskier decks in terms of like, matchup spreads, because you can like shield a deck that your opponent doesn't want to play against, given their line. So there's a lot of different layers here that I honestly would really need to play games of the format to like fully understand. But my just like initial opinion on this is it's got to be better than Specialist, because I'll actually watch this format, whereas I watched 2 games of Specialist and never again for the rest of the season, for their season 1 of Grandmasters. So not Specialist seems interesting, and I think the shield phase is cool, and ready to see how it works out.
I'm actually interested. Why do you think they refuse to do anything like Last Hero Standing? Because they've never, as far as I know, in the limited amount of time that I've been following competitive Hearthstone, DreamHack or like the not specifically Blizzard entities will do Last Hero Standing, and they don't have a problem with it. But Blizzard seems to be very against doing a Last Hero Standing type event as one of their, Grandmasters / highly competitive
So
tournaments.
in the past, I would have said it's because they think people want to see the same decks over and over if they sweep, but so I'm actually not sure. I think it's
Not worse though than just seeing the same decks lose over and over. Like,
yeah, I don't understanding, but I'm not sure why Blizzard moved away from it. I think they did in 2015 to Conquest, and then just kept that the official format for a long time. So I don't know.
I mean, I don't think you can play Last Hero Standing with like a shield phase, because that's just asking for basically Specialist 2.0, except one person gets to keep playing the broken deck and the other person has something else. And
So Firebat's World was Last Hero Standing. They used to do Last Hero Standing 2013, 2014.
Yeah, it was 2014, then they switched at the beginning of 2015 to Conquest.
Yeah. Did they have a ban in Last Hero Standing when they did it?
Pretty sure, but not 100% sure. I know it was best of
4
5.
decks.
Yeah, it was. It was a ban.
I think Firebat's. I think it's Rogue got banned in the finals.
Yes,
because he just was farming everybody with Miracle Rogue.
All right, because everybody else was like, "Well, they nerfed Leroy to 5. The deck is dead." And Firebat's like, "Are you stupid? Gadget Stand still costs 5." And then he won. So it was.
Oh man,
still.
And Conceal was still in that format.
And Conceal was still in that format. And Prep still reduced for 3. And Cold Blood still cost 1.
His mid range Druid deck only played 1 copy of both Force and Roar. So
yeah,
that was a Worlds. It was a tournament.
Yes, but so that was still Last Hero Standing. This format is secretly brilliant, right? Because you've both played Conquest before. What's the strategy in Conquest? You bully one strategy. You bully one deck. You say, I want to beat Warrior, so I'm going to play against Warrior. And then you ban whatever deck's best.
It's either like you bring the statistical best decks, or you want to bully something. And then sometimes the strategies will like line up, sometimes they won't. You
generally want to converge on ban something that's a key part of the format, and then play 4 decks that beat something else that people are going to be doing. And you can't do that here for a lot of reasons. The shield means you can't ban the deck that you're against, and the best of 3 but bring 4 decks thing is super weird, because if I target your warrior, you can just be like, oh, well, I'll just win with these other 2 decks and never play my warrior. So you can't target.
Yeah, so let's actually just use my lineup for the listener series as an example, because like I don't care about telling people what my ban is. It's pretty obvious. So I have Holy Wrath Paladin, Shark Rogue, Aggro Shaman, and Control Warrior with no Lysiana. What am I banning? Clearly banning the warrior here. This
Yeah.
strategy wouldn't work in this format because they'll just shield their warrior and I'll just have unfavorables versus that for forever. So that's a strategy that I went with for the top 8 because I mean it's either warrior or mage, and I feel like mage is easier to beat with more decks as opposed to warrior, which beats most
And also has a
things.
higher fail rate.
Yeah,
Mage has
and
a way higher fail rate
Yeah.
than warrior.
Way
yeah,
higher.
for sure. So with me bringing those 4 decks, most of them have a reasonable chance against mage, if not just outright favored, while all of them are terrible against warrior. And that's why I cut the Elysiana for my warrior deck, because I'm not planning on playing against warrior, so I don't need it. And that would be completely different with us, because my opponent would just be like, all right, shield this warrior, that's a free win.
And
Now I gotta win with the other deck.
And so you can't target, and the decks that you bring, you have to generally anticipate what people are going to be playing, and generally bring 4 different decks that all have kind of a decent spread against the format. You know where else you do that? Ladder. Because before, Conquest and LHS decks did not translate at all to ladder. They would be really, really weird, and they would have specific targets in mind. Like, remember the Bunny Hopper and Vipers Miracle Rogue deck from Conquest Worlds right after Rise of Shadows came out, with Wanted in the main deck and Double Gadget Day and Auctioneer, because it was meant to bully Warrior as a rogue deck.
Didn't they have a Togwaggle scheme too?
Yeah. And you could never do that on the ladder. It does not make sense unless you were specifically in Conquest and specifically banning Warrior. But instead, this format means you can't target a deck. You can't really ban a deck. So you have to play 4 decks with a good matchup spread against what you think is going to be the most popular thing, exactly like you do on ladder. They are having pros iterate and bring 4 ladder-ready cut-and-paste decks every single week to this format. It is brilliant, because these decks are going to be these decks are going to be as close to ladder as any tournament format decks we've ever seen in Hearthstone's history.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. Like even if we don't get the weird tech cards or the off the wall decks like Peanut Shaman or like Hunter Ace's Shaman deck from Worlds that was specifically to beat Token Druid that hardly ever showed up. Even if we won't get as many of those, because that was more of a legit strategy in traditional Conquest without the shield phase, I still think it'll be great just to have, even if it's just 4 copy and paste, like HS replay tier 1 meta decks. It doesn't matter. I think it'll be really interesting because it's what you'll be playing against, and you also just get to watch the pros play the decks that you get to play with. So you can just be like, what are they doing that I'm doing differently? And that's like one of the biggest opportunities to learn too. So I think this is a win across the board, a win for the players because they don't have to play specialists, a win for the viewers because they don't have to watch specialists, and they also get to watch like masters of the game play decks that are well within your reach in terms of ladder. So I think this is just a positive change all around. I'm definitely interested to see how the format goes, because I'm sure there's like some like deeper level like strategies as opposed to just like four really strong decks. But I'm sure it'll get way more complicated with the shield phase in terms of prep. So it'll be cool.
Yep.
Man,
go ahead.
All I would like, I had not really thought about it to the same level of depth Hat had, and I was just excited that we were going to see multi-class again, just because, as I said, when Specialist was announced, multi-class to me is really a core part of how I like to watch my Hearthstone tournaments. And now just hearing Hat talk about at least level 1, if not level 2 strategy of how you build your decks, it makes me even more excited to hear the tournament section again, because we're not just going to hear, oh, hey, these decks are doing well, it's going to be like, oh man, this lineup, or here's like a cookie cutter lineup. Here's a couple cookie cutters, but then this person brought this unique thing and some unique decks. I'm just really excited to see what ends up happening with the tournament mode for this.
Now, I have 2 points of devil's advocacy. 2 things, because I want to make sure we provide a balanced viewpoint. First of all, I think at the highest level of strategy, in particular Grandmasters, I expect to see twitlongers about this format in week 1 and 2, because one thing that Specialist had that this does not is a less variant queue order. In Specialist, there is no variance in what you're going to play against. It is all deterministic. You choose what you're going to do. In this format, there's a lot of variance in queue order, and you only have to win 2 games. And that's really, really different. And which deck your opponent decides to queue may be random. It may be, you may try and calculate it, but that's kind of complicated to do. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about that from pros at the very, very top, because Specialist was skill testing. It was just crappy to watch. But it was very skill testing, and sideboarding is an important skill, and deck building is important and all that. Not to say it isn't in Conquest, especially not
Yeah.
in this format.
Yeah, Specialist, it's not like it was easy. It was like difficult. I mean, some of the best players in the world like struggled through the format for like one reason or another, but it's not easy. It's just boring is
Yeah.
the thing. And I think it would be cool with this format if like the deck you shielded you had to play first. So like you put a shield up in front of your other decks and like that goes out first. I think that would make sense. And that would probably solve some issues about queue order. But I mean, like, I feel like the queue order issues in Conquest have always been blown out of proportion. Like, it usually just devolves into just pick a random deck, so your opponent can't get an edge, and whatever happens happens. But that's usually what like the logic boiled down to. But I mean, I never minded that. It's like whatever, you queue up something against something else, and you're gonna play your best Hearthstone anyways. So
Yeah.
you can't get an edge with literally everything. It is a card game at the end of the day. So,
Yep.
And also, if Hat's right about everything being closer to a ladder deck, then it's going to matter even less because all your decks are going to have to be teched in a way to be able to be more balanced than before. You're not going to be so hardcore targeting a specific strategy. So,
Well, you say that, Bodicus, but here's the other thing, and this I think is way more important. And we're jumping ahead a little bit into the news because they're also making changes to the quality of life for Grandmasters. And the big change, the semifinals of both the Grandmasters playoffs and Master Tour events are best of 5, not best of 3. Which means you do have to win with all of your decks in the elimination rounds. And particularly in the Masters Tour, if you bring a well-rounded lineup with no targeting, and if a deck gets targeted, you just don't play it, you can't do that anymore. You have to win with all of your decks. Because it's the same format, but you have to win with all 3 decks instead of just 2 of them in the top 8 of the same tournament. And that seems really significant to me. Like a strategic shift in the middle of the tournament, and I don't know how that's going to play out.
but like you said, they would have to be able to hardcore target 2 of your decks, right? Because otherwise you just shield one.
Yes. But if your lineup is meant to do a specific thing, and if the theory of the format is that you can't have your lineup all do the same stuff, it has to have diversity, and you can shift between different decks, and you should just bring the 4 best decks that are good against the spread, then maybe this won't matter as much as well. But it's really interesting to me that in the middle of the same tournament, they're changing the strategic implications of a person's lineup. That seems really significant. And I guess everybody's facing the same disadvantage, but there are layers here that are very complicated.
So I think it's overall extremely exciting. I'm excited to see how things go. I expect to be watching a lot of upcoming tournaments, which is not something I expected to do when I was expecting specialist tournaments.
But
However,
how upcoming? How upcoming are you going to be watching tournaments?
however, Masters qualifiers are not going to be changing yet. Those will still be specialists. And yeah, Soul will still be specialist. So we gotta wait. We gotta wait a bit. How do you feel about that, Appa? that were.
I was waiting for Hat to get into this next little bullet point in the news here, because I know he had some stuff to say about it.
It's so we'll save our feelings for a second, but I don't love that the ivory tower gets the new toys and we get to press our face against the glass and watch them do it. It's kind of awkward. I hope that they take some feedback and adjust the Masters qualifiers. I know it's going to take a little bit of time because this format's very strange, and Battlefy has to code it because we're still using that platform on purpose for some reason. And Soul saying staying specialist, that's August 16th, so I guess it's a little bit too fast, but come on.
It's also what everybody used to qualify. Like everybody played specialist to qualify for Soul, and yes, it ideally you would want to, use the new and exciting format that people really want to see, but also I don't know that it's necessarily fair to the players who put a ton of time into learning specialist, getting good at specialist. They won their qualifier. That's the format they know. That's the format they've been practicing. And now all of a sudden, 2 weeks or so, a little more than 2 weeks before the tournament, they're like, oh, by the way, we're doing this completely new tournament mode that we haven't really had a whole ton of testing with. We think it'll be good, but maybe it's not. It might not necessarily line up with the skills of the people who qualified for this event. And I think that could be a really feel bad moment for somebody who's put all this effort into really being a master at this format, and all of a sudden that gets kind of yanked out from under them.
But I mean, they qualified in the Rise of Shadows format in 10 days before the tournament comes out. They get a new expansion. They didn't practice with that either. Should we just delay the expansion?
I mean, no, but but you knew that was a foreseen, like you knew that was going to happen when you qualified for Soul. You knew a new set was going to come out. You knew you were going to have to learn that. But if you have to learn that on top of learning a tournament style format that's never really been done before, we've had something similar to it, but it hasn't actually been live yet. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, these people worked really hard to get good at specialists. They should be able to show off how good they are at specialist in a specialist tournament, because that's what they qualified for.
Yes, I mean, they're going to change the format for Bucharest most likely, so the people that have already qualified for Bucharest will have to learn the new format. I guess that's given them more time. It just feels like it feels like if you were playing ladder now, after we talk about all these new cards, that feeling of I'm doing this because I want something else and this is as close as I can get right now. When you know there's a new, better format that the contracted employees of Blizzard and Grandmasters are going to be playing a week after the event that you're in, and you're excited about it, and then you play same old specialist, it feels like a missed opportunity for marketing for Blizzard. It feels like because they get 3 of these a year, where they're broadcasting giant tournaments, and they have a brand new format, and they know they're going to do it, and this could be the introduction to it. And instead, they're going to have to explain on the 23rd, which is a week after this tournament, why the big event that just happened was a different format than this one, and why all the players had to play specialist, but then the Grandmasters don't have to do that. Just feels strange to me.
I don't know. Feels like Grandmasters is like debuting the new format, whereas this is like giving a close to something that they tried.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So, yeah, there's going to be some quality of life changes for players in Grandmasters, including the 4th place player from each division in the end of season playoffs. They're going to be changing the semifinals of both Grandmasters playoffs and Masters Tour to best of 5, which we already talked about. They're going to standardize the Dex submission timeline across all 3 regions, so people aren't submitting decks at different time or having to submit decks at different times. The match schedule is going to be set to 16 matches each day instead of a bunch of matches, or 15 on Friday, 15 and 18 on Sunday. And then after season 2 happens, they're going to look at potentially relegating more players, which is something we have talked about ever since Grandmasters was announced. What their kind of justification was that they wanted sponsors to kind of guaranteed that they'd have a player that was going to be highlighted in Grandmasters so that the players could get better sponsorship deals, was kind of their excuse for not relegating more players and not relegating after season 1. So what any other notes we have about these quality of life improvements that we want to say? Nothing important. I think all mostly good good things happening with Grandmasters. I'm pretty excited about it, to be honest. And then the last news item we have on here is an interview with Milkfat about Hearthstone Esports on VentureBeat. And unfortunately, I did not get a good chance to read this article, but thankfully, we have Appa here who got to really digest this whole thing, and yeah, we have some takes on this interview. So
Oh man, we're tossing it
take
to
it
me
away,
first?
Appa.
Well, I mean, yeah, this was just an interview with Milkfat that devolved into a meme fest real quick. um, he he said some stuff in here. This was an interview just kind of about qualifiers and like how specialist is going, and yeah, there's I don't know. I need you to set me up here. I got too many thoughts.
All right, so Sam Braithwaite, aka Milkfat, gave an interview about Masters. Now, this is not about Grandmasters, so that's why he doesn't talk about Grandmasters, doesn't bring up Dog or whatever, because it's about the Masters Tour only. And talking about the changes to Hearthstone Esports in general and the nature of how the qualifiers are going. And he has a pretty positive view of where they are right now. And he justifies that using some data that I think maybe, I'm not sure I would have leaned on it the same way, but he justifies his position by some comments including, but not limited to, that the qualifiers are full and have waitlists, so they are popular because they're full. He said that as more people play in Hearthstone Esports, which due to the Masters qualifiers they can, more people are more likely to then watch Hearthstone Esports, because if they're playing, then they must want to watch it more, which I think is kind of provably false.
that's just a large
It's just kind of known
logical
to
leap
be
right there.
incorrect.
That's just right.
And there's a couple quotes here that I'm going to reference, and again, these are straight from the article, not meaning to cast any particular judgment on them, just interpret them as you will. There are a lot of people that are competing in these regularly because there are also packs on the line. A lot of people are winning packs regularly, and we actually see some people that get to the end of the tournament and then stop playing because they want to get packs. I'm sure you do, Sam. And it is more
Okay.
it is more likely that somebody plays in more than one tournament as opposed to stopping after their first tournament. So people are enjoying these. They're having a good time. And we already have more people participating in Masters qualifiers than participate in HCT. One is free and open entry, Sam. You can just play in Masters qualifiers whenever you want. Now, there is also an interesting note at the end here. But now, with the new Masters Tour events, we have something that we can offer third parties, such as here's an invitation to our Masters Tour event. And they talked a little bit, Battle Rift does this specifically, where they can give tournament organizers access to a Masters Tour invite as part of the prize pool. And that's something they hadn't really explored before or talked about much. And I didn't really know they could do this, but they can do this. They can sweeten the pot of prize pools of larger third-party events by giving Masters Tour invites. That's something they can do. And I did not really think about that as a concept, but it means there could be a robust third-party tournament circuit, and I hope that DreamHack is listening. And, Appa, you think you're teed up over there? You think you're ready?
Yeah, I added another quote that I take a little bit of issue with. And the question was, how has attendance been for the new online qualifiers? And he says, what we've seen is that every single Masters qualifier, with the exception of 1 to 2 on really weird time zones, has reached maximum capacity. And not only that, but we have a wait list of somewhere between 100 to 400 people for each of these tournaments. a massive amount of these people are competing in these tournaments on a regular basis, and that's awesome. And that's what we hope to achieve with all this. So if you demolish a bridge that's the only way out of a city, and they're the only other way to get to the other side is to like swim across the river underneath, and people are swimming in the river to get across, are you saying people are enjoying the river, or that's the only thing they could possibly do? That's, oh man, like taking away literally every other mode of qualification and then only giving this and capping them at a somewhat low number, and then saying that people are enjoying it because they have to play with this or just not play competitive Hearthstone, that's questionable. That's not, I don't follow that logic there. And I think that's the one that I take the most issue with here.
It's like, I really like they're changing things. I really do. But the logic for what they change and how they change it, it just doesn't, I don't get it. This seems so tone deaf. Just so completely tone
Yeah,
deaf to what people are going through.
like just the way that they're coming to their conclusions as explained in this article is really
Concerning.
it's
That's the word I'm
yeah,
gonna use.
it's concerning.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's more going on, and the changes that they made, even though there are some ways they executed the specialist format change that I think could have been better optimized, it's a really great change. I don't want to dilute the message. Specialist didn't work. We learned pretty quickly that it didn't work. It lost them viewers, for sure, and so they moved pretty fast on it. They tried a brand new format, and they gave up on it after 5 months. That's, by Blizzard standards, and especially Blizzard esports standards, that is super fast. And I'm glad they did it, and even if they couldn't roll it out right away for the qualifiers and Seoul, like, it's still a great change, and I think this format is phenomenal. And I like the updates they made to G. I like that they're talking about increasing mobility and increasing relegation and all that. I like a lot of that stuff, but I understand that interviews are for press, but the ideas they're putting out there they just seem so misaligned with the general vibe about the game right now that I think that having a conversation like this where you try and paint everything in a positive picture because people have to do what you make them do and then saying that they like it, that just doesn't seem like a good tactic to me. Like, I don't know. Of course, HCT is more popular because you had to qualify for HCT, and Masters qualifiers are open and free. Of course, more people are going to play them. But what does that illustrate?
You know those old ways of qualifying that we used to have? Those are gone. Here's the new things. People are playing in it. They got to enjoy it.
Yeah,
right?
It's for the packs.
Right?
It's clearly for the packs.
For the packs, man.
Now, to be fair, Hatul did say he was playing for the packs and accidentally qualified for 2 Masters tours. So maybe that's a
Hatul's
thing.
also just a walking meme. So
I mean, yeah. Well, I guess we're already talking about.
Yeah.
It's the grand tournament.
All right, it's only qualifiers, and we're gonna talk quick. But I want to pause for a second. There's some variety this week, and the top most played decks are the same, but the decks that have won this week are very different. Not very different, somewhat different. The top decks are still Shark Rogue and Bomb Warrior. Cyclone Mage actually tied only 4 qualifiers this week, tied with Mid-Range Hunter, which has not broken out into one of the top 5 decks in terms of wins in a while. 3 Bomb Hunters actually won qualifiers this week, which is also unusual. That deck typically does not ever win in top 8s. And 2 Aggro Shamans, a Secret Hunter, and a Jombre Token Shaman list all won qualifiers. 8 different archetypes, 3 Shamans, a Secret Hunter, just weirdness. Some variety is present, and there are a few strange decks as well in small sample sizes. Mech Paladin is doing surprisingly well, despite a small sample size. And Death Rattle Rogue. Death Rattle Rogue
Excuse me?
It only had 4 entries total for the week. 3 of them were by the same player, Fladao, and 1 player by somebody else with his list. It had a 71% win rate, and it made a top 8 out of those 4 entries. We have a list in the show notes. It is a mech death rattle hunter, or a mech death rattle rogue, which includes Necrium Blade, Replicating Menace, Blight Nozzle Crawler, Mechanical Whelp, Leroy Jenkins, Heist Bear, and Togwaggle. And it sideboards in to it's got an anti-mage build with the classic Fairy Dragons for pressure, and a Betrayal and a Walk the Plank. And it also sideboards into an anti-warrior build with Harrison Jones and Chef Nomi, and Cairn for more burst.
Fairy Dragon Pressure.
Yeah.
I love how we got the Cairn Bloodhoof, Mechanical Whelp, Chef Nomi Rogue. That's something I expected to see today.
And-
I was so disappointed in Blister Guy. He did a walk tour with a token druid that had Karen in it and didn't call first druid, and I was so disappointed in him.
It's clearly
How many Muklas
counterintuitive.
did he have?
Yeah, it's a good question. How many Muklas?
No Mucklas. It didn't have.
It's not really burst druid.
The old, the burst druid shell didn't it have that 4 mana card that got a 4 less drop from
Oaken
Oaken
Summons.
Summons for Muckla.
The Cairn was the play.
Yeah. Oh man. What a classic
Oh,
meme.
That
Anyways,
makes me laugh every time I think about it.
still funny. Still as funny as Scorpomatic. So we've got a link. We've got a link to this Death Rattle Rogue in the show notes. This is the current format before Saviors of Uldum. So again, if we weren't using Specialists as a format, would we be seeing more interesting decks? And I think the answer is yes. But that's all we had for this week. No more tournaments until the Uldum Invitational on Monday. And now we're an hour into the podcast, and we're about to start the hot take section. So go get yourself a drink, grab a snack if you need one, buckle in. We're gonna do some hot takes.
All right, so this is the last Decksplanations segment before the expansion drops, and that means that we're going to be going over some cards again for like the 3rd week in a row. So, but this time, each of us has picked our not top 5 cards, but just 5 cards that we wanted to talk about, and we also top that off with just a hot take about a card. So these aren't really in any particular order. They're just 1 through 5 and cards we wanted to touch on, and we also gave them a grade for each of them. And I'll go over the grading scale right now. I don't think we have any S's, but those are just overpowered broken cards like Undertaker, Spirit Claws, that kind of stuff. An A grade means it makes a strategy viable, basically on its own. Think of like Zul'jin, or Dr. Boom would probably be an A, not an S. So those are good examples. A B means it makes a deck more because it exists, and think of Evil Miscreant. A C is a solid inclusion, doesn't make the deck exist, but it probably goes in it if you have the support. True Silver Champion and Paladin, usually kind of filler cards. And then D is either very narrow tech cards or an inefficient card that may be required in extreme metas like EMP Operative or, dare I say, Dr. Boom Scheme. And then an F is laughably bad, like Magma Rager, and never sees play anywhere, ever. So let's just start with, do we want to do the hot now or save them for after?
Let's start with one. Let's start with the take.
All right, let's start with your hot take, Hat.
All right. So you want to fight. That's what you want to do. You want to fight. So
I don't know that we're gonna fight about this.
all
We
right.
might.
Bizarre Burglary. This is the Rogue Quest. 1 mana. trigger is the trigger is to add 4 cards from other classes to your hand. And the reward is Ancient Blades, which is a new hero power. 2 mana, equip a 3/2 weapon with immune while attacking. I have had 3 stages with this card. Stage number 1 is I saw it and I said, this is harder to pull off than you think it is, and when you get it, you're not going to need it. That was stage 1, and people were very excited about it right away. And my first impression was something about this feels not right. Like the numbers aren't quite where we need them to be for this to be what we want to do, because it's an aggressive hero power that we generally want to get early, but to get this early, we have to fill our deck with Burgle cards. And then the world started reacting to it, and I thought about it more, and I saw Clever Disguise, which is the new 2-mana spell, rogue spell that says add 2 spells of a different class to your hand. I said, okay, we can get this on way faster now. Obviously, this is good. Then I thought about some more. Stage number 3, which is where I am now. Do you really want to play that many Burgle cards? And if you do, what do you do with the weapon? If your opponent's at 27 or whatever, are you gonna hit him in the face? What is that? 9 times? Just gonna hit him in the face 9 times? Is that the game plan? What are you gonna be a control rogue and do 3 damage a turn to a minion? Is that gonna be enough to do anything in this format? No, I don't think so. The speed with which you'd have to have this hero power active, combined with what the rest of your deck needs to do for that to be relevant, I don't think it ever really happens in the way that you'll want it to when you draw it up. You can get the hero power fast, or you can be aggressive, but I don't think you can do both. Which means I think this card is maybe acceptable, but I don't think it's something I want to be doing. What do you all think?
Yeah, I totally agree. This card seemed pretty mediocre when I saw it. My biggest issue is that I feel like, as you said, the hero power is pretty aggressive, and burgling cards is generally an aggressive thing to be doing. If I'm trying to kill my opponent with 3/2 daggers, I don't want to be playing a spell on turn 2 that gives me 2 random cards. It's and you kind of need to in order for this to be relevant in the early game. And I think it's more powerful than I give it credit for, because when I saw the Gul'dan hero power, which obviously didn't come on till way late, but I think it's almost kind of comparable to that, in that you can kind of put the 3 damage basically wherever you want, and it doesn't cost you life, and 3 damage is a lot. So maybe that pressure over the course of the game is good, but overall it just doesn't seem like the requirements to complete the quest and the quest reward line up together. It feels like those are trying to do 2 separate things, and I don't know that that's necessarily what you want to do. Whereas Burgle cards and a card like Spectral Cutlass, which is a card I would expect to be in most decks that are centered around burgling cards, kind of lines up a little better, because Spectral Cutlass is a very controlling card, and you want the game to go long, and you want to eventually be hitting them really hard and gaining a lot of back. So as long as Spectral is still in the format, I don't know that this is necessarily where I want to be going. But if there's a lot of weapon removal and burgling is good, then I could kind of see it. But I'll have to see it a bit more in person to be impressed by it, because I'm currently not.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a rogue quest, and it's weird, and it has the number 4 on it. So I'm gonna go with possibly playable. That's my extremely room temperature take on it.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 4, or on a scale of 0 to 4, where both ends are the number of nerfs a card gets, and the original rogue quest is at 4, where would you put this rogue quest?
0.
Probably
Yeah.
0.
So, on average, each rogue quest will have been nerfed twice.
That's just
Yeah.
math.
That's
And
just
math is generally correct.
Yes.
God damn it.
Oh yeah, this is a good
Oh,
theme.
yeah.
That's
Well,
if this card was just
What
for
a-
that setup, then I love this card.
what a good segue into making fun of me, because I have a feeling that my hot take is gonna... I don't know what it's gonna do. So I usually don't tweet very much, and I saw this card. This card is called Zephyrs the Great. It is a 2-mana 3/2 elemental battle cry. If your deck has no duplicates, wish for the perfect card. And I saw this card, and I heard the explanation on this card, and I feel like I have a general understanding on this card, and I think this card is really cool and extremely problematic. One thing that we have gone to time and time again is powerful neutral legendaries have always caused problems in Hearthstone. They've always been there. They've always been, or almost always have been, extremely frustrating to play against.
But
And
But
what?
I'm gonna stop you real
What?
quick. Of all the cards that we should probably explain, this is number one of all cards we should probably explain. So,
Okay,
do you want me to
so
explain, or do you want to explain?
I'll do my best, and you can fix what I say.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
So
Just use math.
so
I'll spew words. You rearrange them.
so basically, when you start, the Hearthstone client looks at the game state. It looks at how much mana you have, how much life you have, how much life your opponent has, how many creatures your opponent has in play, how many creatures you have in play, and it goes back to classic and basic, and basically has a pool of cards that it chooses from, and say, here are 3 options of what we would consider the best possible card you can have in this situation this turn, and gives you those 3 options. So for instance, on the reveal stream, this was played on turn 2, and the 3 cards it gave you were Animal Companion, Wild Growth, and the new Dragon Legendary that adds a random battle cry, add a random legendary to your hand. So it basically said, you have no mana left. Next turn, depending on what your deck is trying to do, you either want board presence in Animal Companion, ramp in Wild Growth, or value in, I should know, Brightwing. Brightwing's the card. And you're probably going to want to play a 3-drop next turn. From what I also understand is if your opponent is at 7 or less life, if they're at 6 or less life, then it's going to give you Fireball as an option, or Leroy, or something to give you lethal damage. Every time you have you have the potential for lethal damage, it will give you a card to present lethal. So if you have a bunch of minions in play, and Savage Roar or Bloodlust is lethal, and you have enough mana to cast it, it'll give you that as an option. So every single time you play this card, you will be able to get lethal if that is a card in Classic or Basic that could give you lethal. If your opponent has a lot of minions in play, and it looks like you need to remove them, it'll give you cards like Flame Strike, Blizzard, Frost Nova, will all be options that you can take. So yeah, it's literally, it says wish for the perfect card. In every situation, it is going to wish for, you are going to be able to discover the perfect card for the scenario as long as it exists in Classic or Basic. So
here's my hot take on this one. I think the card's going to be good, and I want to take a second and ask you guys to remember back to when Kazakus was still in Standard and Reno was not. We still had Kazakus decks. We had the Raza one because that one was busted, but we still had just singleton decks because Kazakus was so powerful. I think Zephyrus on average will be about as good or just better than Kazakus in a lot of scenarios. So I think this is certainly the deck building payoff to justify playing a Highlander deck, because this card seems very good to me. I've never played with it, never played with a card like it, but just from having it explained to me and just going through different like thought experiments and like what it can do, it seems extremely powerful.
yeah, it just seems like, so I tweeted that I think that this is going to be one of the top 3 cards that are going to be miserable to play against. And mainly because I think that whenever this card gets played, like basically when you're playing against a Highlander deck, you can never let yourself get within lethal range of any Classic or Basic cards, because they can literally just play this card and win the game every single time if you get in range. I'm not saying that necessarily you will be able to build a Highlander deck, that makes use of this card, but is a neutral card. So it can literally go in any deck. So if there is a deck that can create a Highlander that Highlander can be good in, this card goes in it. It's just always going to be in there. And even if it's not good in the second set, we still have a third set, which just adds more cards and makes Highlander easier to do. I just really am scared of powerful neutral legendary cards, because maybe this card isn't good now, but it definitely could be good, like extremely good in the future. And it's just going to be one of those cards you see, and you know your opponent's going to get the perfect card. So you know, the feeling that you get when your opponent has the perfect card feels bad to me a lot of the time. So I don't know. I just expect this card to be really cool. The design is amazing. Like the thought that went into it is incredible. Like I never would have expected a card like this ever, and I think it's going to be a cause for concern, whether it's now or when the next set comes out. I just feel like this is going to be a problematic card that we're going to look at in the future and very much dislike that we had to play against it. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope that it's just you get to play it and it's fun and you see it every once in a while, and since it's kind of a one-time effect, then maybe it's not so bad. But the fact that this card gives you Frost Nova and Blizzard in all 9 classes, or it gives you Bloodlust in all 9 classes, it just literally always gives you lethal. If you can set up lethal, it just feels I don't like that. I think that's going to be very frustrating. But I guess we'll see.
So losing sucks, and this card will probably make it if you play against it that you will lose more often, and that means that it will be worse for you. But think about all the singleton decks that have ever been built. Has there ever been a singleton aggressive deck? I think no. I think the answer is no.
There hasn't.
No.
No.
So,
Also, never really had a reason to.
well,
Kind of
that's true.
no.
But also, if you play this card on 2, we actually know what it gets you. It's because it's not smart as in
We know what it gets you if your opponent has no minions, because
yes,
if they have minions, it might change it.
right. It doesn't use machine learning. It uses a bunch of predetermined scenarios, hundreds and hundreds of scenarios, many scenarios, looks at a lot of things, but it is not machine learning. It's not dynamic. It doesn't update as the meta develops. It doesn't look at other games as they play out and say this other card would be more perfect here. No, Matt, Reno Zoo was not a real deck. That was a mid-range deck. It was not an aggressive deck. And on turn 2 with no minions, it gets you Animal Companion, Wild Growth, and Brightwing. Now I think about Kazakus. Kazakus, when it got a 10 mana potion, that was for value. That was for bulk of cards. What in Classic and Basic does that? What in Classic and Basic gets you a ton of value? You could get Savannah Highmane. You could get
Killing your opponent.
Well,
Yeah. What
but-
what card has ever given you the perfect card every single time you played it? There's no.
But okay, say your
That's
opponent's
not a
above.
precedent that's been set before.
But say your opponent's above 10 life. What does this get you? It's yes, dying to it sucks, but we don't have any history of aggressive Reno decks because aggressive Reno decks are very hard to construct and very draw dependent because aggro is about redundancy. And
yeah,
you,
but like
you don't play this on
like
2.
it just doesn't say like you have to be playing an aggressive deck to set up lethal. It just says if you have lethal set up, it gives you that, and if you don't have lethal set up, then it gives you the perfect card for any other scenario.
But what is the perfect card from Classic or Basic in many scenarios? Right? We've described board clears.
Well, it's the whole set. It's not like 3 cards. You literally get any card.
I know, but what cards are actually in there that give you infinite value the way that Standard does right now? There's nothing in Classic and Basic that competes with Dr. Boom. Otherwise, other decks would be better, right? It gives you one card that does one thing from a set that's been repeatedly nerfed that doesn't really have a high end. Like the infinite value is Jiraxis, I guess. That could be the infinite value. I don't know if it's smart enough to look at the game and say, you need a 6/6 every single turn to win this game. Maybe it does. Maybe it's really cool. But the scenarios we have described are board clears, burn to the face, and minion buffs. So you have to be playing a singleton deck that can find those solutions and get you there, and it can, and it'll win sometimes. But this card seems more like it's built on getting answers than on getting threats. And the answer might be opponent removal. Opponent removal is the best removal. But if your opponent's not at 10 life or lower, and you don't have a really wide board so you can get a Bloodlust or whatever, then it's much more likely to get a defensive card. And getting the perfect defensive card is a good thing, but it's not going to be the same level of frustration of I'm at 6 and just hoping my opponent doesn't have a burn spell. Plus, you also know if they're playing a singleton deck pretty early on, I'd think, and you'd be able to just play a little differently, because when you go down to below 10 in this format, you're only doing that against decks that you think don't have burn, because otherwise every other deck can kill you from hand. And we're already playing around bombs anyway, so you would just not play that aggressively with your life total. I can foresee some situations where giving a singleton deck access to break down class barriers could be really frustrating, and this could be a dependable win condition in a deck that doesn't otherwise have one if they're planning on doing chip damage but can't quite get you across the finish line. But for this card to be the difference maker in a situation between I can't win and I can and do win right now, it seems like it has to be a pretty specific scenario. I think it is way, way, way more likely to get you an answer instead of a threat. And if it gets you an answer, yeah, getting flame struck by a druid doesn't sound super fun, but it's better than dying, and I think it's way more likely for that to happen. And singleton decks don't have the payoff that they did otherwise, outside of this card. Because the other singleton payoffs, I mean, Finley is way more BS on turn 2 than this is. Way more BS early game. Way, way harder to beat, because that's a snowballing advantage
but
that accumulates over the
Finley-
course of the game. And I'm not saying
But
we should use that
Finley's
as a
way-
watermark.
Yeah, Finley's also way less BS than this card on turn 10.
Maybe.
This card on turn 10 has a lot more potential than Finley does.
Sure.
Or at the end of the game. It's
Yeah.
like, and also just like Finley is a paladin card. This is a neutral card. Like I've said, like we have talked about this multiple times. The neutral cards, the neutral powerful legendary cards are infinitely more scary than class cards. Think about Ziliax. We didn't even think that card was going to be good. And then now look at it. It's literally in every deck.
Sure.
And now
But
you look
there
at this
was-
card, everybody looks at this card and says, this is a good card if Singleton can exist.
And that's a
And
big
that-
deck building restriction. And it might be one at the end of a 6-set format where it's less troublesome, and then this card just goes in every deck and you get to play the Zephyrus game, and I really hope it doesn't come down to that. Because if Singleton is doable in 9 classes, then yes, we have a problem. But that seems to speak to...
it doesn't have to be doable in 9 classes, it has to be doable in 3 classes, right? If it's doable in 3 classes, then you see this card all the time and you hate it.
No, you hate it. You hate it. I don't think this is going to be as much of a bomb as you think it is, just because it can't really generate value. It's an answer or it's lethal. And I don't love that it transforms into both of those things, but there's no infinite value card in Classic. The set doesn't have one. Like, Jiraxis is about as close as you get. And if it's all mirrors all the time, if you play Jiraxis, they play their Zephyrus, and it's guaranteed to get you Sacrificial Pact. Can't do it. In the Zephyrus mirror, the second Zephyrus always wins, because it blows up the Jiraxis. I don't know. It's the perfect card for a scenario and the perfect card for a deck aren't the same. And I wonder how many times you'll be able to make those two meet in the middle. It seems way more reactive than proactive.
I mean, we're just gonna have to play with this one.
Yeah.
I think
It's
this
also
card's-
impossible to evaluate.
Yeah, I think this one's gonna be enough of a payoff to push people, at least in tandem with the class payoffs in like Finley, Bran, Elise, and Reno. I think it'll be enough of a payoff coupled with those to push you towards one of those classes. Because I don't think on its own it's enough, because it is, like Hat said, a lot of the time it'll probably be like board clear, like some kind of stall tool. I mean, sure, a lot of the time it'll give you a threat too, but it's not generating like tons of value on its own. It's just being either another like pseudo copy of a card in your deck in terms of an effect if you're like running board clear, or it could be, again, lethal's the dream scenario because the game just ends. But yeah, we'll definitely have to play with it to understand the range of what it can get in different scenarios. But I really do think now that we have this along with the class cards, which are also fine on their own, I think bring some of the Highlander decks, the singleton decks, maybe not the tier 1 or anything, but I think it'd be at least playable in terms of like being able to climb with them on ladder. I think the Elise one will be interesting in finding out how people build their decks, but I think Zephyrus is just a very good tool for the decks to have access to bridge any like weird mana gaps in a draw, or I mean you can even just run it down on 2. It's just very flexible on different points, basically anytime, because yeah, it's just a weird card. I'm gonna need to play with it, but I'd expect for it to see some play.
All
All right, Alpa. Hot take time for you.
So my hot take, which isn't like super hot take, I guess, is about Siamat. And this is the 7 mana 6/6 neutral legendary elemental, and it has Battle Cry. Gain 2 of Rush, Taunt, Divine Shield, or Wind Fury, and it's your choice. So whenever I first look at this card, I kind of compared it a little bit to Ziliax in terms of just being a neutral rush minion with Divine Shield. I mean, Ziliax is obviously significantly stronger in terms of utility, but I've thought about it a little more, and I'm a little more down on this card than I initially was, but I still think the card is very good. I think it's really close on the line between auto include and Dex and not, in terms of being one of those really powerful neutral legendaries that you just see all the time. Like 7 mana is a very awkward spot for a lot of decks, and this one is extremely flexible in terms of what it can do. I'm glad it doesn't have lifesteal. Yes, I agree. But so if you need a big rush, like a big burst of damage to kill a chunky minion and leave something behind, you just give this Rush and Divine Shield. You attack, kill their thing, have a 6/6. That's pretty good for 7 mana. We played with Firelands Portal. It's nice. If we just need a threat against a slow deck, then you just play it as Divine Shield Wind Fury, and you're like, okay, I'm going to hit you. And if you need a Tyrion on 7 mana, you just play 7 mana Taunt Divine Shield. You don't get the weapon, but playing against a Tyrion is still annoying in terms of Taunt and Divine Shield. So that's good. And then if you need to kill 2 small things, or like maybe even like a 5 health thing and something else, you just give it Rush and Wind Fury. So it's got a ton of applications for basically any deck that wants to get to this point. It's a board control tool, and it definitely fits in the format where it's all about initiative. This being able to have initiative, or being able to give a player initiative and remove something and leave something behind, is very powerful, I think. And yeah, I feel like I'd probably give this card like a B minus. Like whenever I was thinking about it, I was like, this is probably just an A in every deck, but it's still kind of slow and it's still a little awkward, but it's still 7 mana, which a lot of decks have trouble like filling in that point of the curve. And this is just one where it's like, this is good in most situations. Let's just throw it in there. It's just like a Swiss Army knife of a card, and I think those are generally pretty good. And also, this in Shudderwock Shaman is insane. So
I feel like this card is like a worse Ziliax, so it's not going to go in every single deck, but is still very good, and you can put it in a lot of decks.
That's exactly what I thought of after like taking some time out. I'm like, it's a worse Ziliax, but is a worse Ziliax still good? Is the question, and I think yes. I think it's probably still good.
This card reminds me of something, but I can't quite place it. It feels like almost like 8 mana Bone Mare, or like not quite Cobalt Scalebane, but oh, my internet's frozen. Oh no.
Still here. Faces in a. Oh no,
No.
you're
Back.
My internet dropped for like 10 seconds, but I have an angry red light over here. Hold on. I'm still here, but Spectrum is problematic. Okay. Spectrum freaked out for a minute there. Yeah. The comparison that I think that I like a lot is Corpse Taker. I think Corpse Taker is about where I'd land. Defensive, high utility,
but less build aroundy.
less build aroundy, slower, not for every deck. I think that if you are planning on curving into the late game, you want to do this. If you are playing a minion-centric deck, you want to do this. If you're not sure what you want to do on 7, but you want the game to at least go past turn 7, you want to do this. What on earth is happening with my internet?
Good memes.
It's happening again. Yeah, my internet is crapping itself. But it's like you have to want to get to turn 7. You have to want to play a survival tool that is also theoretically a threat at that point, and that's just not going to happen that often, I don't think. The format's not about this kind of effect right now. Now, you put this right in mid-range shaman or control shaman. You probably put this in Conjurer Mage. Like, you probably put this in Cyclone Mage. I don't think it's the best card in it, but it's good enough to be defensive, and it's a great Conjurer's Calling target, and it can kill a couple minions, it can taunt up, and against control, you can just give it Divine Shield Wind Fury, and attack for 12 the next turn.
Yeah, I imagine that probably, like, not that you needed a ton of help anyways against Warrior, but having this as just an extra threat on its own against Warrior is actually pretty nice, just because of the way that a lot of lists line up with like super colliders and 2 brawls and a BGH. Like, just having an extra threat would be pretty nice too.
Yeah, like this is not the Lich
Nice
King.
BGH. I got 6 power.
Yes. Yeah, we go right under the BGH. This is not the Lich King. You don't just drop this in a deck. This is not Ragnaros. This is gonna be something that you have to have a reason to put it in your deck instead of having a reason not to, like Ziliax, which you really should put that in your deck because 5 mana versus 7 is such a big deal, and the guaranteed rush and the lifesteal and the taunt, Ziliax does too much, and Siamat shows you what a fixed version of this would look like. And also, if you're ever going to play against Mad-at-Arms at the Hero Power Podcast, if you're going to concede, you have to play this card first, so you can be like, see ya, Matt, and then you can concede.
You just had to do it. You just had to say it. It wasn't enough to put it in our live chat. You just had to say it out loud so that I could sigh audibly.
I'm a weak man, Botticus. I am weak. Did you enjoy that?
No. Let's go. We're 40 minutes into hot takes, and we haven't even started our 5 card reviews.
Okay.
Let's move.
All right.
Let's move.
All right. I'll go first with my number 1. My number 1 is 2 cards. It is Bone Wraith and Kartut Defender. It is 2 cards. I think Bone Wraith is the better card. And these are 2 neutral Reborn taunts. Bone Wraith is a 4 mana 2/5 with Taunt and Reborn. It is a common. Kartut Defender is a 6 mana 3/4 with Taunt and Reborn. Death Rattle, restore 3 health to your hero. It is a rare. I do not know if these will be the most played cards in Standard. I do not even know if they will find their way in decks. Bone Wraith is not quite Tar Creeper, is not quite Sludge Belcher, is right in the middle. 2 attack is way worse than 3 attack, and do not underestimate that. Do not get it twisted. Way worse. Because when minions attack into your minion and don't die through your taunt, then that is way worse for you than if they do die. Obviously. Tar Creeper's a better card. Sludge Belcher's probably a better card, but 4 mana is a really nice sweet spot. The format does not have a lot of this effect right now. It does not have a lot of good early defense, and the combination of these 2 cards means that any deck that wants to can have a really annoying anti-aggro package, and that will shape the format because these cards exist even if they don't see play. That the existence of these 2 cards gives Untitled Appa. He's sneezing up a storm over there. It's the Maelstrom.
Oh man,
The Maelstrom's got him.
oh,
The
that
existence
was aggressive.
The existence of these two cards means that you have to build your decks with these in mind, because these are strong anti-aggro tools. They're going to be worse in your control matchups, and in particular, the way Bone Wraith matches up against Militia Commander and Dinomatic is not ideal, but it's good enough. These cards are also, Reborn is really, really great with the Priest Quest, and I think the existence of both these cards is really significant for how the format has to take shape, even if the cards themselves don't see a lot of play. And I do think they will see a lot of play. In particular, I think Bone Wraith will be one of the more played cards in the format.
Yeah, I really like Bone Wraith. I'm not as high on Kartut Defender. I don't know if I give him the same grades, the A/B that you have down here, but I do very much like I do like the first one. I really like Bone Wraith.
Bone Wraith, yeah.
Because I will yes, I understand that 2 mana is, or 2 attack is much less than 3 attack, but also 4
That's just
mana
math.
is much less than 5 mana. I'm quitting. I'm done. No more podcast. I'm out of here. F
Look,
you
man,
guys.
I just said that's just math.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything else.
But yeah, but 4 mana is, and it's such an important curve slot. Like, Mage doesn't
I mean,
really
like,
do anything.
yes,
at
it's way
4 mana.
different, but like, it's essentially overall 1 less toughness for 1 less mana, and I make that trade every time.
1 less
Overall,
power.
it's 1. Well, no, because you get the extra power on the
All right, on the 2/1
Reborn
yeah.
side.
Yeah, and
So,
a 2/1 versus a 1/2. 2/1s are worse at defense in this Mage and Rogue meta that we live in. But if someone has to attack into it, you're okay with that. That is cool. I think the card is really, really strong, and I think when this comes back from a Psychopomp or whatever, or you just play it in a Quest Priest and then you heal it up, I think it's going to be super duper annoying. All right, Bud, what's your first card?
all right. So my first card is Dwarven Archaeologist. It is a 2 mana 2/3 that says whenever you discover a spell, discover a card, reduce its cost by 1. I don't know that this is going to see any play whatsoever. I have no idea if there is support for this, but I think this card is cool. I don't know that you can put enough cards in your deck that discover things, but getting a little bit of a mana discount on a body that is acceptable, I think is cool, and I think might be able to find its way into specific decks that are discovering a lot of stuff, because discover is powerful, and yeah, I mean, it's just like kind of a solid little minion. I think. I don't know. I don't actually foresee it seeing a lot of play. I just thought it was a cool card, so I put it on here, and I give it like a C. It's like a card that if it has support, it'll see play.
The interactions that really stand out to me with this card are Omega Assembly, Hunting Party, and Crystal Song Portal in particular. Because all 3 of those, you don't see the Discover prompt when you draw all 3, but it still discovers, so you get 3 discounts. And Omega Assembly, you're doing fine. You don't need to discount that.
Good thing this isn't a beast, because Master's Call.
It is not a beast, but Crystal Song Portal costs 2, and this costs 2. 4 mana, get a 2/3 and 3 Druid minions that cost 1 less. I've played worse cards than that. I've done worse things than that in decks. I think that could be interesting. All right, Appa.
So,
Yes.
my card is one that I actually do think will see a lot of play, because Blizzard designed this set specifically for me, clearly, in terms of their Shaman cards, and they gave me Maelstrom Portal again. And while it's not exactly Maelstrom Portal, there's a card that's called Sandstorm Elemental. It is a 2 mana 2/2 elemental. And it has Battle Cry, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions, and it overloads for 1. And so we have a couple things here. One is that we don't get the upside of Maelstrom Portal, which is that you can have spell power and it'll deal 2, which is, it's significant. It's not nothing. But you also get the upside of this where it's always a 2/2. There have been a lot of times with Maelstrom Portal where I've rolled a 1/1 or a 0/3 with the spirits, or just something that didn't actually put pressure on the board. Like Blood Imp is another good example, where you always know this is a 2/2. So that's pretty significant. And I'm kind of looking at this card more as a what's a 3-mana 2/2 mage minion that Battlecry dealt 1 to your opponent's stuff. Anybody?
Twilight Flame something?
Yeah, Twilight
I thought-
Flamecaller.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at this as a mix between like Maelstrom Portal and Twilight Flamecaller, because Overload does not technically mean a card costs that much overload, because your deck is built around sequencing in and out of overload turns. So it is a 2-mana card, but you do have to pay that 3 overall for it. So coming down for 2 mana is significant and very good. And Maelstrom Portal should have taught everybody that even that card for 1 damage is very strong. So not being able to hit the overload and deal 2 is a loss, but I think it's still good enough and made up for enough with the 2/2 body that can actually fight on the board. So I put this card at probably a B or a B minus. So like, not the reason a deck is like viable, but like certainly helps. And this will be going into um, probably a lot of Shutterwalk decks as well. I mean, depends on how the meta shapes up. If the meta's like it is right now with just like mountain giants, you probably don't want this in your deck. But if there's like a decent aggressive presence and some like more smaller minions, you definitely want this. So I put it at like B or B minus.
I mean, as long as Snip Snap is in the format, this card's going to be good because people are making a bunch of 1/1 mechs, and then you're just like, get him out of here. Don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. You want me to just do my next one, then we can just snake between all of us?
Hit it.
So my next one is Mortuary Machine, which is a neutral minion. It is a 5-mana 8/8 mech, and it says, after your opponent plays a minion, give it Reborn. And the reason I bring this up is because every time we've had one of these, it's been good. It's seen play, and it's been good. And that's a 5-mana 8/8. We had and Undertide, and I think, not sure if we have any other new, but I think specifically with the mech tag, it actually makes it more appealing because you can put it in Galvanizer, reduce the cost of it, and it's quite an appealing magnetic target, because if you go big and your opponent silences it, awesome, you still got an 8/8, don't have to worry about the drawback. And yeah, just 5-mana 8/8s in aggressive decks are usually carry the weight on their own regardless of the drawback. This one is get to double up on it a little bit,
Ziliax.
but
Ziliax. Don't.
Yeah,
Don't.
I think this card sucks because Ziliax is in the
Like,
format.
Playing this when your opponent
just-
plays a Ziliax is just such a
yeah.
dick punch. It's such a.
Yeah.
I'm gonna edit that. It's such a. It's not. It's like if Bodicus were playing against Zephyrus would be what it feels like.
yeah, for sure. Like if the Ziliax, like you can pack that one up, and that's why cards like this gotta have a downside. But I imagine if Ziliax either touched in some way, which it probably should be because it does a lot, or after it rotates out, I would not be surprised if this saw play.
Maybe. I don't know. Personally, I think this card probably sucks. If you just play a taunt into this, it's like pretty bad for you most of the time.
But if the taunts already
and,
have
like,
Reborn,
if
the taunts already have Reborn, if the format takes shape around taunts with Reborn, then this has no drawback against them. It's just a 5-mana 8/8. This is super context.
I don't see that happening.
Probably not. But this is super context dependent, right? Because what you want to do with this deck, the Fel Reaver drawback said, I don't care about the cards off my deck. The game's not going to go that long, so we're just going to attack you for 8, and I'll get rid of the cards, and it's fine. Bittertide Hydra was meaningfully counterable because of the nature of interactions with stuff like Volcano, for example, which was hilarious, and also that other aggro decks could race you back. This is kind of in the middle, that you're kind of giving up ground against aggro and control, but a little bit less ground in one direction, and a little bit more ground in... You're probably worse overall, but not as extremely bad against one of them. you have to play this card if you're going to make the game over real fast, and you need the board to matter less. Now, if you play this, and the next turn you play a Doomhammer, that's a lot of damage. That is a lot of damage very quickly, and you have 1 mana left over for Urshock. Now, I don't know if that Magical Christmas Land scenario happens all the time, but if there's any deck that's going to play, it's going to be something like Aggro Shaman, where the game is over by turn 10 one way or another. Either they're dead or you're scooping, and you deal a bunch of damage in short burst windows, and you have the ability to briefly mitigate your opponent's defenses. If you can do
you could
all
definitely
those.
play 1 or 2 of these in Mech Hunter. It's one of those decks that
Yeah.
frequently says, I'm just going to load up and hit you in the face. And usually, right now, it has a couple, like 1 or 2 flex spots. Some people play like Harvest Golem, Unleash the Hounds, Boommaster Flark. You can just put 1 to 2 of these in there, and it's probably fine there. Like, yeah, if your opponent has a taunt, like, it's bad for you. But that was going to be the case anyways, and it makes it a little bit worse for you, but also gives you an 8/8. So I think the drawback is in the decks that want it is definitely fair, and the grade I'm giving this card is a C, because I think if you have a support for it, it'll go in the kind of deck that wants it, and it's a very specific kind of deck, and I don't expect to see this all over the place, but I would be surprised if I didn't see this for the entire time it was in standard.
Yeah, I think I gave it a
I
D.
could be wrong.
Because it's more... I think it's more like playing this as a response to a meta, not defining a meta. And so I think there are some situations where you'd play it, but you'd have to know what you were getting into first. It's not just objectively powerful; it's specifically attacking something. But I could see it seeing play. I don't think it's unplayable. As opposed to Botticus' next card. So why don't we just get into that one?
Yeah, so the next card I put down here is Shadow of Death. I put on the sheet that I think it's a B, but it's either going to be a B or an F. This card could very easily do nothing. It is a rogue spell, 4 mana, shuffle 3 copies of a minion into. I just had this up.
It says choose a minion, shuffle 3 shadows into your deck that summon a copy when drawn.
Rogue doesn't exist on on this side. I'm looking up cards, so my god, this is
It's in the
miserable.
shadows.
Yeah, so either way, what's going on with this? Okay, so I don't know that a deck exists where this card works, but if there is, I think that deck sounds potentially powerful. I've heard shuffling 3 copies of Leroy into your deck, and there could just be like really powerful death rattle minions that you put copies in your deck, and then it just plays them when they're drawn. It's
No, man,
it's a card.
the real combo is Desert Obelisk Rogue.
I don't know. I don't think so.
You just go down to fatigue, and then you target Desert Obelisk, and then you draw them all. 15, and then you die.
Or no, because you play Desert Obelisk, prep this, and then you get 6 copies in play, and that's 30 damage. OTK, boom, easy.
we figured it
Explain
out.
to me the B part of this card, because I'm hearing a lot of the F part, but where's the B part? Where's the part where this is playable?
The part if it ends up actually being an OTK with Leroy or something. If you, I mean, shuffling 3 copies of a minion into your deck, and if you're able to draw them quickly, like if you're able to do, like, we still have Myras in Rogue, so it's possible to be able to Myras and then set up an OTK the turn after. Like we played.
You can do that with Myras, but you can do that with Myras in anything. You can. That's not. If you're drawing your entire deck, killing your opponent shouldn't be hard to do. And like this is Faldori Strider, except you have to bring your own 4/4. It's a Faldori Strider, except the 4/4 is not included. You must purchase your own.
4/4.
BYOS, bring your own spiders. Like it's
Yeah, I actually don't think this card will be very good, but I thought it was an interesting card and has potential. I don't think you can deny that there is potential in a card like this. Like, the effect, I think, is powerful.
There's potential in Blood of the Ancient One. That could be a 30/30.
All right.
It's not.
We'll
but it could
see.
be.
I mean, I can't wait to get a card on your list. Why don't we go to your
Okay,
next
so
card?
it's if Shadow of Death is in a meta deck, then I will buy you 2 packs of the next expansion.
All right. If Pharaoh Cat wins any special, is in a deck of any specialist qualifier, I'll get you 2 packs.
You can just buy them right now. All right. Let's head to my next card, which you might know it's Nerubian Egg. No, wait, it's Serpent Egg. It's a 2-mana 0/3 common. Death Rattle, summon a 3/4 Sea Serpent. So they took a point of power from the Nerubian that was inside, and they moved it to the health of the egg. And that's all they did. Otherwise, the card is the same. And Nerubian Egg, for those that don't know, was a 2-mana 0/2 that when it died, it gave you a 4/4. We know this is good. We know already. Like,
we don't need explanations for this.
This is not an effect that we've struggled with. We do this already in Standard with 3 1/1s, and 3 1s lines up way worse against things than an 0/3. And we have Plague of Flames now, which I'm also going to talk about, and that's my next card, so I'll just bring that up right now. I'll just bring it up. Because Serpent Egg, it's a 2-mana 3/4 if you do stuff afterwards. It's just kind of a known good quantity, and you can buff the egg, and then when the egg dies, you get stuff out of it. It's really, really strong. It's a really good card. Plague of Flames is weirder. It's a weird card.
Okay.
Right, go. Commentary?
We know that this egg is good? Really?
It's Nerubian Egg. It's a card that's seen play. Like,
it's got 1 less power on the egg, and Undertaker isn't a card.
Okay, so we paid an extra mana on Devilsaur Egg for just +1/+1, and
Did we?
Well,
We played it when Death Rattle Hunter had a 1-mana activator for it.
We're playing Scarab Egg
And
right now.
Carnivorous.
we
playing-
have activators in Zoo. We have
we're playing
Direwolf
Scarab Egg
Alpha,
right now.
We have Grim Rally. We have take your pick. We got activators.
Yeah, this card right now is better than Scarab Egg, and Scarab Egg is currently playable.
That's my bar that I put it to, like 3 power versus 3 power, and I think this egg is significantly better than Scarab Egg in Zoo.
It just slots in.
I disagree. If you're talking about Grim Rally being your payoff card, I'd much rather
like
have
with Knife
3
Juggler,
1/1s.
I can see that. Like if you with the Knife Juggler synergy, you can also play both, and then go back to playing Defender of Argus if you want to. There's a lot of ways to make the egg good, but it's just kind of a known effect through Hearthstone's history that's been good enough in when we have ways to abuse it. And I doubt that it's under the line that we've drawn for previous effects of similar impact. Like I don't think it's significantly worse than any of the ones that I've seen play in the past, and quite a few of them have.
I think one of the bigger ways that you lose as Zoo versus Conjurer's Mage as well is flooding the board too much, and then your opponent goes Frost Nova, Sea Giant, Conjurers, and then you lose the next turn. So this giving 2 less minions over Scarab Egg and putting them into 1 body is actually pretty significant for that matchup too. Not to mention, I just think a 3/4. It's probably close in terms of payoff as the Zoo, like standard Zoo list is right now, but I think I would still take the 3/4 over the 3 1/1s. Every time I play a Scarab Egg in that deck and have it popped, I'm like, man, this kind of sucks. Like, they're fine, but I wish this was like a body and not just 3 dinky 1/1s. Maybe that's just because of the format we're in right now. I don't know, but I think I'll end up liking this card a lot, and I think I would not be surprised to see it played over Scarab Egg and Zoo. Maybe even both. I mean, who knows? Like, if you play a bunch of sacrifice effects, like Plague the Flames or something, like maybe you just play both, and it's good. But yeah, I mean, Nerubian Egg is good, and just taking 1 power off it, I don't think makes it suddenly unplayable.
Well, and also
Well,
Titanic
it's
Lackey
taking a
makes
power-
Titanic Lackey makes it way better, right?
Well, I don't know.
It's
You guys might be right, but I like 0/3 is way worse than 0/2 if your idea is that you're going to try to it. Like you might just not be able to trade this in right away. I don't know. It's
Titanic Lackey gives a taunt though, and that seems also quite relevant for being able to build a ton, and then when they punch through it, then you get a thing.
Yeah, maybe.
And also, with this other card that I want to talk about, called Plague of Flames. And Plague of Flames is a way weirder card. Way, way weirder. And I'm not sure of the application quite yet, but it's a 1 mana spell, Warlock rare, destroy all your minions. For each one, destroy a random enemy minion. 1 mana to kill a bunch of stuff is... You have to work for it. There are other costs involved here, but that's powerful. That's 1 mana to kill a bunch of stuff. And I don't know if there's quite yet a scenario where we do this, but in a world where the best board clear against Cyclone Mage is in Zoo, is a very strange world indeed. Especially if you have Scarab Egg that you've popped, or a bunch of random lackeys, or anything, really, that generates a bunch of demons. Or random throwaway minions. If you can keep your board full of stuff, whenever your opponent decides to fill up, you can just undo everything they've done. And even if they only have a couple of minions, it does guarantee destroy all your minions. So if you're a more mid-rangey deck and you have 3 or 4 minions and they only have 2, then you probably don't want to run it, but you're probably ahead. But if you ever fall behind in a major way against a deck that is trying to outclass you, this seems like a really nice way to remove that. Now, I don't love how tempo negative it is, which is why I think it's going to be difficult to use. But I think there will be situations where you can really find ways to take advantage of this card. And even if you go Serpent Egg into Scarab Egg Plague of Flames on turn 2 and a turn 3, you wipe the board and give yourself a 3/4 and 3/1/1s. Now, again, I don't know if that's necessarily likely, but if that is an early game swing turn that matters, that's going to be really, really strong. So I can see a lot of situations where this kind of effect is more upside than downside, and the ability to destroy minions that cheaply is pretty powerful. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's a weird card. Gonna have to play with it. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think the format's gonna have to look a very specific way for this card to be good. But if it does look that way, then I see this card being quite powerful and quite good in the Warlock strategy. I mean, when you have a card this cheap and effect this powerful, as long as uh, you can make the right build, then I think it's got a lot of potential for sure. All right, my next card is Unseal the Vault. It is the Hunter quest, which was revealed, and so the quest is to summon 20 minions, and the reward is changes your hero power to 2 mana +2/+0. I think this card is really cool. I like that, unlike the Rogue quest, where I felt like the requirements for the quest and the quest reward were somewhat at odds with each other. This one's just very clear what it's trying to do. You play minions and then you buff them, and that's probably pretty good. I expect this card to be pretty good. I like that you can also play this, and you can also still play Zul'jin, and you might complete the quest before Zul'jin, but then Zul'jin will play the quest again, so that you can complete it after the Zul'jin, or you might play Zul'jin to complete this quest, and then you get the better hero power, because we all know how I feel about the Zul'jin hero power. So, so you might just play a couple of the new cards that were released for Hunter that go really well with it, like the 6 mana spell that summon Swarm of the Locust that summons 7/1/1 locusts with Rush, which is potentially really powerful. I just can see this going in a lot of different Hunter decks. I don't see it being terribly difficult to complete. Although by the time you've played 20 minions, if you haven't won the game, I don't know that the reward necessarily gets you there, but I kind of hope that it does. So I gave this a B plus, because I don't know that it's a slam dunk. I think it's definitely got potential.
I wish we didn't have to play Swarm of Locusts with this card, because Swarm of
I don't
Locusts
think you do. I
You
think it's close.
20.
You might have to.
20 is a lot. 20 is a lot
20
of
is so
minions.
much.
20 is so many minions. And if you have to play Swarm of Locusts, that means you're not playing Zul'jin. Just because you're turning
Yes,
off.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that those two do not go together.
Eh,
But I think that you can use Zul'jin to complete this quest.
But then you just win with Zul'jin. That does Zul'jin need help?
Sometimes, maybe. I don't know.
Every time I play that card, it's like, wow, this card is good. I win now. So, like, you can play a card that says Zul'jin is coming, I guess. Harbinger of Zul'jin, but the idea of playing Zul'jin to finish your quest seems kind of a little win more, a little bit. I don't know. 20 is so many. 20 is a lot. I can't imagine playing a hunter deck that fixated on making minions instead of making my opponent's health total go down. And then you have to keep making tokens after for the effect to matter.
So, yeah, I'm not sure how to feel on this one either. But speaking of potential, what's your next card, Bonicus?
Okay. I guess we'll just go to my next card. It's a untapped potential. It is the Druid quest, and I gave this one an A. And the reason why I gave this one an A is because I was watching Purple play this on stream today, and very unrefined, very untuned decks, but as soon as I saw how fast he was able to complete it and how he was able to catch up almost immediately on the board state, made me think this has a lot of untapped potential. So the quest is end 4 turns with any unspent mana, reward Osirian's Tear, which is basically it changes your hero power to a passive. All of your choose one cards give you both effects. And basically what this kind of turned into after he completed the quest is he was essentially every single card he was playing was essentially playing 2 cards, because the choose one effects largely are when you play them, you choose one, so that's 1 card. But if you're always getting both of them, you're essentially getting 2 cards every time you play it. And I think this can go in a variety of different Druid decks. I think it can go in the singleton version. I think it can go in a deck that's playing a bunch of duplicates. I think Hidden Oasis is a huge boon for this card, just because it helps catch you up so much by restoring 12 health and giving you a 6/6. I expect this card to be good enough to make Druid playable as something other than Token Druid. I think this card's really good. And all of the Druid cards that were spoiled, with the exception of maybe one, all of the ones that are in this set could go in this deck.
That Druid
and
2
slot
drop.
in nicely.
That Druid 2 drop, the 2 mana 1/4 that draws you a card of unspent mana. That card seems super good. Super duper good. And yeah, I will tell you that I was wrong about this card, because I also gave it a high rating, and also because I watched on stream and the reveal stream, and if I had not seen it in play, I would have said this sucks. And I don't think it does. I think it is going to be fairly easy to get this to work quickly, and the payoff is much larger than I expected. So,
I mean, Fandrel's just good.
well,
that
Fandrel's
effect's
just good.
real.
Losing your Druid hero power seemed like a big sacrifice, and not spending all your mana every turn sucks. But from everything I've seen,
Whenever I'm playing Druid, I feel like I don't want the hero power past like turn 5 or something though. It's just like I don't want to
That's-
attack into giant things.
that's clearly correct, because we saw people do it today. But if I hadn't seen it, I would have said that this was a bigger sacrifice than it is. So I agree that this is going to be this is a thing. It's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Scenarios with this card is so dirty.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Scenarios is
That's
so good with
it's the
this
best
card.
case scenarios.
Oh my. All right, moving on. So my next card is Hyena Alpha, and it's a rare hunter card. It's a 4 mana 3/3 beast. It says Battle Cry. You control secret, summon 2 2/2 hyenas. And I mean, I
Big
shouldn't have
fan.
to explain this card, but I'm going to. So, at worst case scenario is you have no secrets on board, and you have to play this. a secret and then this on 6, and then you're getting a 3/3 and 2/2/2s. So that's a 6 mana for 7/7 split across 3 bodies is not a great deal. But the good thing is that Hunter plays situational secrets that sometimes don't trigger unless you have something on the board. So imagine having a curve of like the 1/1 moth or Springpaw into like trading into something, to snake trap on 2, eagle horn on 3, and then play this. You're just pretty much guaranteed to have the secret still up. Sometimes like even pressure plate if you're playing against mage or something. You just play that, play a secret that you'll more than likely have up going into turn 4, and then play this, and then you have 4 mana 7/7 worth of stats across 3 bodies, which is pretty good.
And every
I
hunter deck that's
remember
playing secrets right now plays 2 Rat Trap. Like they're all playing double Rat Trap, and Rat Trap is not triggering before this card gets played. And if it does, congratulations, enjoy your 6/6. You're doing fine.
Yeah. So the card that I was kind of reminded of whenever I'm looking at this is like Emerald Spellstone, and obviously this is much weaker because it's not 3/3s that it brings along. But coming down a turn earlier, in exchange for 2/2s instead of extra 3/3s is pretty good. So I'm happy. I'd be happy playing this card, and I think it's probably going to be a solid B in the secret decks. Like, definitely makes the deck more powerful and smooths out the curves. And yeah, I think it's going to probably see a good bit of play. I'd be surprised if it didn't, honestly.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. It seems quite strong if you're able to meet the condition.
It seems like one of the best cards in the set to me. Like it seems super duper strong, and
Yeah.
it's when it triggers, it's a 4 mana 7/7. 4 mana
Yeah.
7/7.
Definitely does look good. And then I'll just move on to my next card. Is King Phaeorus. He is a 10 mana 5/5 legendary neutral minion. And he says, battle cry, for each spell in your hand, summon a random minion of the same cost. And I have this one graded at a C because it's obviously very conditional in that you have to be a deck that plays spells, and you want to be a deck that plays reasonably sized spells. And those don't always exist, but I think with the printing of Naga Sandwich as well, which is the 5 mana 5/5 rare mage minion. Says battle cry, change the cost of spells in your hand to 5. It'll probably push you in a direction that you want to play big spells again, like you used to whenever you had Dragon Collar Alana in your decks. So reducing the cost on blizzards, flame strikes, potentially even pyroblast, Yogg's puzzle box. I could see a deck playing those. I mean, probably not being very good with Cyclone Mage in existence, but outside of that, in a vacuum, I can easily envision a deck that wants to do that sort of thing and play a slow game. And in that sort of deck, this would function as kind of a weird mix between Dragon Collar Alana and Spiteful Summoner. So it's a really interesting sort of win condition for that style of deck. It reminds me of like Spiteful Summoner mixed with like N'Zoth or something, and that it's a big army in a can, but it also is dependent on what's in your hand at the same time and produces some threats. So it's an interesting card to me, and I gave it a C because I think if the environment exists for that kind of deck to like for you to want to play that sort of deck, it's going to be good. But other than that, it'll probably just kind of sit on the sideline and have just pun unintentional untapped potential.
This card should be titled Clown Fiesta because it brings the clown car with it and just like vomits out a bunch of random stuff and you don't know what it's gonna do. But this seems like a druid card to me. Like you just want to ramp into this and just be like Clown Fiesta and see what happens. Because druid has a bunch of like random big spells and likes to ramp and actually has ramp payoffs now. because you can just overflow into this.
Yeah, you could just draw 5 cards.
Should I just touch on my last card then, since that bridges
Yeah.
very nicely?
Do it.
And my last card, which I also have rated as a B, because I think it'll make decks more viable that it's in. And that's the criteria for a B. It's a Druid minion. It's an epic. It's a 5-mana 3/5 with taunt. Pretty unexciting. But then it says, this costs 0 if you cast a spell that costs 5 or more this turn. And Blizzard, we just did this. Not even a year ago we did this. And it was in the same class. Ain't nobody played Arcane Tyrant outside of Druid. And this being printed with cards like Hidden Oasis and Overflow in particular seems very strong. And yeah, Arcane Tyrant was good. And I think this version might be better than Arcane Tyrant. I think it's close, but removing 1 attack for 1 health and then giving it taunt is significant. So I think this card is very good. I wouldn't put it in A range because I don't think it's making a strategy viable on its own, but I think it will make any deck that it's in much better because it exists, and it will also be very frustrating to play against. I'm sure, because Arcane Tyrant was something. So this one, yeah, I think it would make sense if you had a King Feoris deck with a Nubisath defender in it as well. And yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on for Druid this expansion, I think.
We finally have reasons to ramp again, right? When you ramp now, you can spend Nourish for mana if you want, because you get more cards with Overflow. You get a free taunt when you Overflow, and then you can just Clown Fiesta, and stuff will happen. Or other Druid payoff cards, like you could theoretically Overflow with Loosenbark. Very good. It's a very good thing.
Oh man,
do.
I just thought of like having untapped potential and completing that early, and then nourishing to ramp you towards your King Feoris and also refill your hand with big spells. Ooh,
There's a lot going on there.
this is
If
spicy.
you can survive, that's the big thing. Is if you can survive, and
Don't worry, man.
it'll
I got
be
my Hidden
interesting.
Oasis. We're homies.
Yeah.
It'll be
All
fine.
right. So my last card, I just changed the grade on it because I thought about it a little more. It's more of just an interesting card that I hadn't really thought about before, and it's pretty innocuous, but it's called Quicksand Elemental. It is a 2-mana neutral minion elemental rare that says Battlecry, give all enemy minions -2 attack this turn. Now, if the format looks how it has looked, where the board doesn't really matter that much and you're not really attacking minions into other minions, this card's not going to do anything. But if we get to a point where you're attacking your minions into their minions and you get to play this as an effect, I think it could be really solid. It's definitely a card that I'm looking at as just kind of interesting, more so than playable. So I changed it down to a C because I don't know. It just being able to mess with your opponent's minions and giving them less attack, and I don't know, the blowout potential seems like pretty high on this if you're talking minion to minion combat, but when you're talking about a bunch of 8/8s or a bunch of mechs with rush, this is significantly worse. So we'll kind of see if this can ever find a slot, and I kind of doubt that it will, but I just thought it was kind of a cool card. Lots of elementals in this set too, by the way.
So
Kinda
this is
interesting.
very good with Cabal Shadow Priest. Very, very, very good with Cabal Shadow Priest. Mossy Horror still legal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good with Mossy Boy. Very good with Mossy Boy.
Oh, Shudderwalk and Mossy Boy in this card.
Yeah. And this card also just, you win minion combat when you do this. This is significant. This has not been in a neutral before. And when you get to attack and all of a sudden their stuff doesn't kill your stuff, that's good. That's a good thing to do. So if minions are fighting other minions and they're on the board the turn that when you start your turn and you don't have rush, this allows you to win all those combats. And it's got to be absolutely disgusting in Arena, right? Like, this card in Arena has got to be unbelievable.
Yeah, this card is so dumb in Arena. Oh my God.
They printed some really, really powerful cards for Arena. History buff, the 3-mana 3/4 that whenever you play a minion, buffs a minion in your hand. They printed,
which I almost wanted to talk about.
History
just
buff
because
is
it's
close.
almost powerful enough to get standard play.
Yeah.
So it means in Arena,
it's
really
got to be goofy. They printed an 8-mana 5/6 that deals 5 damage when you Battlecry, but like in arena, this just means you win all the trades suddenly, and your stuff doesn't die, and that seems really, really, really important. And I could very well see this in main decks and constructed. I could absolutely see this being played because it's a strong effect, and I do think Battlecry Shaman will probably play this. I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if Battlecry Shaman, like Quest Shaman, played this card.
Oh man, double this,
Yeah.
and then play this, and then play Mossy Horror.
Yeah.
Kill all of the 5 and less power minions.
You reduce them, and then you kill them twice.
I'm in my happy place right now.
This just seems good. And speaking of battle cries that give you a ton of value, let's talk about my next card. You only got 2 cards left. Let's talk about the cat. Think about the cat. Bodicus doesn't like the cat. I know why Bodicus doesn't like. Bodicus doesn't like pets. That must be it. Doesn't like dogs.
Because
Oh
a
my
cat
god, it has
can't-
nothing
it
to
can't
do
be
with the
a
fact that
pharaoh.
it's a cat. Oh my
Can't
god.
physically perform the duties of a pharaoh.
Okay,
so
what-
Bodicus hates it.
What cards are we getting from this card? Why is this good? Please,
Okay.
please explain your B rating for this card, where all the reborn cards suck.
Okay. So
Most of the reborn
Pharaoh
cards
Cat.
suck.
is a 1-mana 1/2. Battle cry, add a random reborn minion to your hand. It's a beast. It's a rogue card. It's a common. Now, reborn is on a wide variety of mana costs, including one that costs 10. It's it's only the 1/10 drop, right? It's not. There's a 10/10 with taunt, and then there's a 10/10 with reborn divine shield. Yeah, there's only the one. Also on a bunch of, reasonably okay neutrals. There's Mermy, the 1 drop. There's Candle Taker, the 3 drop. There's some class cards.
Literally, the only one I don't want to get from this, looking through the list, is Generous Mummy. All the other ones are completely
And the
serviceable.
10/10 you don't want to get early. You don't want to play this on 1 and get a 10/10.
Yeah.
But there's a card called Firefly. It's a 1-mana 1/2 that put another card in your hand when you play it. And I'm not going to say this is like Firefly, because Firefly was better in the early game by a large margin. But I think this isn't that far off. And sometimes
This is like Jeweled Macaw, or Swashbuckler, or a mix of those and Firefly, because it's a 1/2. And every time we've had a 1-drop that comes into play early on, I mean, because it's a 1-drop, but it comes into play and recoups you some form of material at all, I think that card's always seen play. And even though we have the chance to low roll Generous Mummy, which
ugh,
you're gonna feel bad about, that one's gonna feel bad.
unless you have a Witchy Lackey in hand.
Yes. You're gonna get something reasonable. Like, we have 4-mana 4/2, 3-mana 3/2, 2-mana 1/2 with some text. There's a bunch of ones here that are fine
And
because
there's
it's just giving you something to do. Like, a lot of the elementals suck, but Murmuring Elemental's still fine. It's still a good card because it just
Not
comes down,
it's,
puts something.
Menacing Nimbus.
Nimbus. What am
Yeah.
I thinking of? What's Murmuring Elemental?
That's the double battle cry for the next thing you play
Oh
this turn.
yeah, I get those confused. So Menacing Nimbus, it comes down, just gives you something on the board, and then at that point, it usually doesn't really matter what specific thing it gives you. You're gonna make use of it unless it's Quartz Elemental, which is Pharaoh Cat's Generous Mummy. So you're gonna have a low roll in there, but it comes down early, provides significant board tension for the first few turns, and then recoups you some sort of material, which is pretty important. I mean, it may be less important for Rogue because they usually function on leveraging mana costs on their curve efficiently, so this could be kind of clunky. But I mean, I played with Swashbuckler before in Rogue, and while it's different because it can give you anything from your opponent's class, this is a more like
The pool
kind
is
of narrowed down
pool is smaller, so your
Yeah.
failure rate's a little bit higher because the options are lower. But for every time you get Generous Mummy, mathematically also you get the Warrior 3/2 with Russian Reborn, which is disgusting. And every time you get that, your opponent's gonna feel like you do when you get Zephyrus cast against you, Bodicus. It's just gonna be a blowout. I would struggle building a rogue deck that was meant to have any kind of early game curve without this card in it. I just think I'd put this card in. I just think it would always be there. because it just gives you something to do and is usually fine. And sometimes it gives you a 10-drop, and sometimes gives you an unplayable 3-drop, and other times it's just
and then
it's stuff.
it also just has the hidden mode in Rogue of pair me with anything and I'm a combo enabler, plus the reborn thing you get off. So I think it just like hits enough of the boxes in Rogue to just be like, at least in the first week, just trying this out with 2 hubs. Like whenever you build a Rogue deck. I mean, I've just seen effects similar to this enough before to know that like this is probably just going to be one that you stick in a deck and it's good enough. Like 1/1s are usually good enough, and like 1/2 is just better than a 1/1. So yeah, I mean, it seems fine to me.
All right, sure. I think this card sucks. I think I'm pretty unhappy getting like 7 out of the 10 reborn cards. I think that the majority of them suck. I think Bone Wraith and Restless Mummy and Mermy are like ones I'm pretty happy to get, and then like Grand Mummy, Micro Mummy are okay, and the majority of the rest of them are pretty bad. So, like,
Candle
if I ever
Taker
get
is,
a
like-
Wrapped Golem or a Colossus of the Moon, I'm just like very upset. Even though I think Wrapped Golem in the right deck, I think is fine, but like in the majority of rogue decks that I can think of, I don't know. This card does not impress me. I think I don't know. It feels like that combo card we were talking about, the epic one, where you're like most of the time the cards you're going to get are pretty bad, but I guess that one at least had the requirement of you had to play a combo card with it, like you had to play another card with it, and this just always
Whirly Kick Master.
kind of gives.
Yeah, Whirly
Yeah.
Kick Master.
But at least that one has the potential to like go off with like a bunch of combo cards in a row. I don't know. It's
Sure. I mean, this is just like
I'm probably wrong about this card. Obviously, you guys both think it's good, but I just think that a lot of these reborn cards suck, and it's probably not going to see play. Maybe we get more reborn cards with the next set. It looks better to me, but or maybe it just sees play as, like you said, a Firefly that you can't play the second half of.
it's like
Most of the time,
it's a card neutral 1-drop, and card neutral 1-drops need to have a lot of reason to not play them. So I haven't found the reason to not play it yet, and maybe the reason is that it secretly isn't card neutral because the cards you get are unplayable, and you die with them in your hand every game, and that would make it not card neutral anymore. But if you're ever casting the second card in the game, this is a 1-drop that does not cost you a card, and you play those every single time, 100% of the time. So we have to know for sure that the reborn cards you get off this are unusable for this to be bad. And they
also,
might be.
like you brought up Swashbuckler, but that's because we had patches in the
Patches.
format,
Well,
and
it's
like Firefly, you
Pavel.
just always got. You always knew what you were getting.
Yeah, well,
like,
I mean, there's
Mage-
other examples too. There's like Jeweled Macaw. There's Babbling Book. There's the
yeah, well,
stupid
Babbling
Death Rattle
Babbling Book
versions.
gave you a mage spell, and mage spells on average are way better than these cards, in my opinion. But that,
Yeah.
maybe not. I don't know. I feel like I just disagree with you guys on, but I also like I probably am just evaluating the whole set incorrectly, because everybody else is saying that the set is very powerful, and I look at the set on a whole and I don't see it as powerful as everybody else seems to see it. So like I might just be overall thinking that these cards are a lot worse than they actually are. So that might just be a misevaluation on my part, and then it'll come back to haunt me in a couple weeks when everybody's making fun of me for my card choices.
No,
So
I don't think you're wrong about that, though. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is, before I talk about my last card, I think this is a great time to talk about it. This set is pushed in all the right ways. Because the set looks really powerful, because they turned up all the numbers on the minions, but the secret thing about Hearthstone is that minions are bad. Or not bad, but like, the entire game is built around dealing with minions. Every single card in the game is operating on the assumption that your opponent's going to have stuff on the board and you're going to need to kill it. So you can tune up the numbers on the minions a little bit, and it still doesn't actually majorly affect gameplay, right? Because minions can be better than they are now and still be killable and fair, whereas freeze and giants and conjurers calling and every minion having rush and bombs in your deck, you can't stop those by playing 4-drops, right? You can't stop those by playing 2/2s. It's just something that happens to you. So this set is really dialing up synergy and then minion payoffs. And I think it looks really flashy and really big numbers. But in terms of what actually matters for gameplay, it doesn't have a huge impact on strategy when the minions are a little bit better. So I think the set looks a lot better than it is, but I think it's pushed in all the right ways. And that it's really pushing people towards more board-centric strategies with decent enough payoffs. Because you have to make minions really good to deal with the fact that all these spell-based decks and doing things from hand is naturally a better thing to be doing if you want to win more. So this set is well designed in terms of flashiness. Like, for example, my last card, and the last card we're going to talk about today, I think is very flashy and is also bad. I think is a bad card. And this is Dark Pharaoh Tekahn, the Warlock Legendary. Mana 4/4. Battle cry for the rest of your game. Your lackeys are 4/4s. Okay, Appa, you're making a face. What's your face telling me?
Okay, so I want to point out that you have graded this card as an F.
Yes.
And for you to do that, you have to say, this will win less tournament games than Dr. Boom's scheme. That's how bad you think this is?
Warlock has Evil Cable Rat, a 1-mana spell Discover Lackey that I think is not even good. And
Oh, I think that card's very good. We've
That card's
established on the show that you would put the lackeys in your deck on
Yeah.
average.
it's Sinister Deal. I don't know how many of those lackeys I'd pay 2 for. Don't know how many of those would a 2-mana
I
version
would
of any
pay
of those lackeys.
2 to turn on the quest in my deck.
But like, how many lackeys are you gonna have? If you have 2 Mad Geniuses, Evil Geniuses, which are it's a very good card.
Mhm.
2 Evil Cable Rats, which are a fine card. You get 1 lackey, and then 2 Sinister Deals. The sum total of lackeys you're gonna generate are like to break even on the power that you're investing in this 5-mana 4/4. To break even on how much you're overpaying for the 4/4, you have to pay 2 lackeys. You have to play 2 lackeys after. That means you're playing 2 lackeys after your 5-drop, and at that point in the game, being a 4/4 for cheap has to matter. So you have to generate lackeys, survive, play either an aggressive deck that tops out with a 5-mana 4/4 or a mid-range deck that stops at a 5-mana 4/4, and then play a bunch of 1-mana 4/4s after, and they have to be relevant in a strategy that doesn't have any kind of resource generation or tutoring for those 4/4s that already is playing minions of similar size that isn't effective.
Resource generation, like a hero power?
But they can tap, right? You can tap, but it's playing a 5-mana 4/4 and then life tapping to find another 4/4 does not excite me. That is not an exciting thing to do. Like,
I'm going to be discarding a lackey with my 3-mana 2/6 taunt, and then I'm going to be generating infinite Soul Wardens and playing a Soul Warden and a 4/4 every turn. A 4/4 that does an insane thing.
I mean,
Like,
if
you can
you
generate
wanna,
lots
if
of
you want to
lackeys if
work
you
that
want.
hard to get lackeys, if I'm doing Soul Warden shenanigans, I can think of other, like,
We had to
Insane
work
payoffs.
really hard to turn on like the rogue quest. And I mean, they are very different, but I mean,
really,
are no
really.
joke.
But how they
And-
don't have charge, and how many are you going to see? How many lackeys do you see in your zoo decks? 2 a game? If you put an Evil Cable Rat, you're just slowing down. Like, I don't see any deck that wants to play.
I'm not playing this in Zoo 0% of the
Okay,
time.
but so
Literally
what
never.
deck
Yeah.
is this in? What are you
A
doing?
new deck.
Yeah,
A brand new
mid-range
deck.
warlock that
Okay.
cares about lackeys and plays a 3-mana 3/3
This
that makes a
doesn't go in
5/5.
anything that exists right now.
It's
This
just
has to play the new card and Cable Rat and Evil Genius and have a plan for all those. And also function whenever this is not active. But I don't think that's super hard to hit all those check marks, especially with like all these new cards that we got. And I mean, this isn't just the payoff for having lackeys too. Like Evil Recruiter is big. That thing is thick.
it's
And
it makes making the 5/5s. It's you
Yeah.
have to be all in on the lackeys. It reminds me of Burgle Rogue before they printed the support cards.
So
It's-
I'm not sure what grade I would give this card. I'm not sure how much play it'll see. I can obviously see the potential here because that's what we're talking about. but this cannot be worse than Dr. Boom's scheme. I will not live in that world. That's
I
not
cannot give this an F ever.
I think
I could definitely see it ending up being a D, but I mean,
so.
I cannot see.
We've
a
already
5-mana
established that
4/4
Dr.
being an
Boom's
F.
scheme has seen play in a tournament deck list or two, and I think this card will not see play in high-level tournament deck lists that are successful. I do not
Well,
think
if it doesn't, it's a thing where like if it doesn't, it's because there's not a lackey deck. It's not because.
But this only works if there's a lackey deck. This is the payoff for that deck. Like that's like saying that that Blood Queen Lanathel is only bad because there wasn't discard deck. No, it's built around a mechanic that doesn't work. So a card that's built around a mechanic that doesn't work isn't
But
a
we
good
know
card.
the lackey mechanic works.
But we don't
We've
know that it
seen
works in
lackeys
Warlock
work.
enough that you want to play a critical mass of them to the point where you're upgrading your generated 1-drops on turn 6. We don't know that that's what you want to do. I believe you can play lackeys. I don't even think the lackey deck would play this card. I think you can play a deck with Evil Summoner. But this just, if you're aggressive and you want to be doing other stuff, if you're mid-range, then you can get way bigger than this right around this point, and you just don't have that many where the extra +3/+3 on the 2 extra minions you're going to play after this is as relevant as just playing better cards. I'd rather just play better cards in my deck than jump through all these hoops to get some 4/4s.
It's like, what better cards are you playing in Warlock right now?
I wouldn't play Warlock. Like, you don't have to play Warlock, but if I'm playing Warlock, I'm probably going slower and bigger, maybe. I don't think Warlock's in a great place still. I think it got a bunch of cards that, again, look flashy and aren't actually that great this set. It's the payoff cards for Warlock are probably like the Egg is the best Warlock card I think that's printed this set. Maybe Plague of Flames, but it's still kind of hard to use. But this is small and with a poor payoff for mid-range, way too slow for aggro, and control is obviously not going in this direction. I'm just not sure where I ever go with this effect and win a game with it. Where if I don't play this card, I lose the game, and if I do play this card, I win the game. I don't know what deck where this is the thing that makes the difference.
Do you lose the game if you don't play this card?
Well, so if you build a lackey-based deck, and you can win without this, like consistently,
Yes.
how much of an advantage does this give you in those games? I wouldn't be surprised if this is a win more
Probably
card.
a decent amount, like +3/+3 is a lot. That's like saying if you can win without Heist Baron Togwaggle, how much of an advantage is that giving you? Like,
Well, I mean, that was
you,
cut
you
from
can
a bunch of
build the
decks.
deck to like win without him, but like he's also just fine in that deck for a little extra power, you know?
But I think playing the payoff you get from Togwaggle is immediate and not dependent on other cards. It's not incremental advantage. It's a sudden slam dunk of value and cheating mana. This is the payoff for this is an upgrade on cards that aren't in your deck that you have to go and get. And you don't play that many, and you don't play a lot of ways to use them, and you want to use them earlier in the game. So I just don't think you'll have that many lackeys left. I think the payoff is just not going to end up being something you actually see after you play this card. Because lackeys are, like, if you're playing Evil Cable Rat and all that, you want to use those early, unless you have other things to do, I guess. If you're eating it to Evil Recruiter, how many lackeys do you have left? I don't know. So if you're generating lackeys early, eating one of them exactly, then playing this card, then playing them later, sure. Maybe that's a thing. That seems like a strategy that's pretty underwhelming a lot of the time.
Okay, I could see that. I just bring this one up and kind of needle at this one because that fat F on the on the grading scale. It's
I think this
I
card
don't know.
is too underrated to see play in legitimate decks. I think that it'll fall out of favor after a week. Maybe it's more in line with like an Oblivitron where it's a D, where it's a really, really specific inclusion, but it seems just more like a card that people will try because it's in a deck recipe and because it's cool and flashy and a set legendary, and then it'll never see play again. The placement on the mana curve is what kills this card for me, because every time you want to play lackeys in any game, you want to play them fast and early, and they die, and you want to use the effects right away. And they're good because they generate immediate value, and then you don't care about the minion. And this makes you care about the minion and hold your lackeys when you want to play them for the great early game advantage they give you. You just say, if I get my early game advantage from my lackeys, then I lose the payoff from this card. And if I play this card and hold my lackeys, I don't get to play the super good early game minions that my deck is designed to generate. It creates this internal competition between your early game control and your late game payoff, and having to choose one or the other really sucks. Like, it doesn't upgrade it in both points of the game. It makes your early game worse to make your late game a little better. And at that point, on turn 6, how good are 4/4s? You have to have a lot of them, and this format is pretty good at dealing with reasonably wide boards of medium size. You just don't have enough lackeys, and you want to play them soon.
Yeah, I think both Appa and I take issue with the fact that you gave it an F, not the not that it's necessarily a good card. I don't know that it necessarily gets there, and I agree with you that there might not be enough lackeys now, but I don't think it's like if you get one or two more good lackey makers that make this payoff worth it in the next set, then we're talking about a whole new card. So
But okay.
maybe it's like a D, right? Maybe it's like a D or a D minus right now. But
either way,
I don't
this
know.
is
I can-
grading semantics, and
yeah.
I can definitely agree that I can for sure see a world where it doesn't see play, but want to play devil's advocate for the not F grade on this.
Okay, so Dr. Boom Scheme, I understand that's a big part of what we're talking about here. Dr. Boom Scheme. Dr. Boom Scheme is not a card that you put it in your deck and then build around it, right? You can play Dr. Boom Scheme in random warrior decks. You probably shouldn't. Dr. Boom Scheme is not a good card. I don't want to give the impression Dr. Boom Scheme is a good card. I don't think it's a good card. I think it's a very, very bad card. But in your pre-existing warrior deck, when you need a large chunk of armor, and that's a specific way that you gain a specific advantage in a very strange spot, you could put Dr. Boom Scheme in your deck. There is no deck where in your specialist sideboard you add in Dark Pharaoh Tekahn. It is either 100% you build around this card or 100% you never play this card. And I think the build around is so poor that you never play it. It's not a tech card. It's not a fringe card. It's not supporting any strategy. It is either your full strategy or it is nothing. You never just slap this in a deck. Just say, I've got 29 cards. Oh, we'll just throw in a Dark Pharaoh Tekahn. Whereas you could throw in a Dr. Boom Scheme. You probably shouldn't. Please don't. Unless it's specifically for Warrior Mirrors in Fatigue and you already have Elysiana and multiple Baleful Bankers in your deck. You should not add Dr. Boom Scheme. But it's a card that you can add onto another deck. Dark Pharaoh Tekahn is either in the Dark Pharaoh Tekahn deck or is not a playable card. And since I think there is no Dark Pharaoh Tekahn deck, I think that is an F. Because it exists in one deck only and that deck is an F. That is my theory. It's a very different grading scale because the standard of will this card see play is not the same.
Okay. I think that's more than enough time on this card. So basically, this card is either a B or an F, and you're saying it's an F because
Correct.
you don't think that it's there. So
this is.
I don't think this card is ever an A. I will say that this card is never like you build the Dark Pharaoh Tekahn deck and you need this card to make it work. I think it's like if Dark Pharaoh Tekahn is a deck, this card is good in it, but also in order for that deck to win, you don't need this card.
It's
Because
an
I think
evil
the lackeys
recruiter
are
deck,
good enough.
and Dark Pharaoh Tekahn is your secondary payoff.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a last card because we already did it, so let's get into Appa's last card.
We did all the cards. We're done.
Wait, we did.
We did all the cards.
we snaked back to Hatton. He was the
snaked.
Sneak.
We did.
Oh yeah, never mind. I thought this was a different card. All right.
We did it all. Yes.
That was an episode.
We're good. It's
Lots of hot takes.
It's super spicy takes. All right. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at coinconcede.com, where you can also find our content info, show notes, and Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.tv/coinconcedepodcast. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Write it to our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/coinconcede. If you'd like some CC swag, head over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Viriatus, Donald, Pug Ugly, and Doge TK. And I'll go first with Coin Concede this week while you two get yours ready. I'd like to first Coin Concede to the Hero Power Cast, Zeroshio, Avantis, Man-at-Arms, Forsica, of course. He's not on the show right now, but he's part of it. And their Hero Power ranking sheet, community ranking sheet, which has quite the audience these days. I filled it out as well. I filled mine out blankly. I made a copy of the sheet, filled out, hit everybody else's rankings, and then pasted mine in. I was right between Schwal and Nicolaius. It was very enjoyable looking at all three of our ratings next to each other, because there's some discrepancy. There's some discrepancy there. And in particular, when I told Schwal that I rated Bone Wraith a 5, he retyped the card text to make sure that I was talking about the same card as him, so I think we might have a difference of opinion there. Also like to coin concede to Peter Svidler. You may not know him. He's a chess grandmaster who also is a fan of the show. And so I watched some of the Chess Rush tournament that he was commentating on this weekend. And chess is a hard game, and it's enjoyable to watch, and I didn't really understand any of it, but props to you, Peter. You're good. You're a good man.
I'm sorry.
Why?
For me.
What'd you do?
I don't know. I feel bad. This really smart grandmaster chess player listens to our show, and I'm on it.
He hasn't stopped listening, or at least I don't think so. So you keep doing you, man. And Coin Concede Development's Chosen. I was on their podcast last night, also talking about a lot of cards. Good people over there. Grant, Eve. That's Watchman and Lore Master Eve on Twitter. So definitely check out that episode when it drops. And Appa, looks like you got a Coin Concede ready.
Yeah, I'm just going to coin concede to Taylor, my fiance, for those of you who don't know, because she's been struggling with tilt, basically always. But the past few months, she hasn't hit one. She's got up to like rank 1 and then kind of spiraled down to the floor again. But she finally, didn't really completely overcome tilt, but got enough of a hold on it that she was able to hit legend again, and she got up to top 200 with Reno Nazoth Shutterwalk with weaponized pinata in it. So in classic Taylor fashion, just dunking meta decks with nonsense. So coin concede her for that.
And what about you, Bauticus?
Coin concede to no one. I hate everything. Math is stupid. Move on.
Okay, that was uplifting. All right. Well, I guess we'll end the show on that note. Is the secret that Bauticus is Dark Pharaoh Tekahn? Is that what it is? That must be it. Well, keep calm and hold the lackeys. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
I go home now. Boss will not like this.
You really sunk me, ship.
You fiends have bested me.
Our plans did not work.
I have no more time for this.